What is up, everybody? Welcome to Pub Sports Radio and welcome to Stat Diggers, where we go balls deep into the stats for the upcoming card. This week, we're actually having the week off. We have no fights coming up on Saturday, so we're going to be 2 weeks early. So we're going to be ready. We're going to be prepared. We're going to keep our eyes out for the props. We don't have any lines out on the fight. Doesn't go decisions yet, but we do have lines on the fights. So we're giving like an extra early look into the fights. I love it. There are no days off. So really do appreciate Weezy getting everything prepared for us. Got the matchup template done in 2 weeks in advance. So that's awesome. So looking forward to it. Looking forward to hanging out with all you guys as always. Before we get started, if you guys can leave a like on the video, it does help a ton. Really do appreciate all the support you guys hanging in and week out with us. I do want to shout out that we do have a new show on Tuesday. If you guys have not seen it yet, check in next Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. It's our DraftKings show where we have a panel of 4. We have me, Uncle Weezy, Luke from Sparring with Reality, and Z's MMA. It was a very fun show. Cannot wait to do it next Tuesday. So go check that out, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. But before we get into the recap for last week, we have the GOAT in the chat, Tajik Bey, with some donos. He says, support the MMA community. We have more. And he says, sincerely, go. Appreciate that, Tajik. I see a lot of people's chats supporting the community and awesome. That's awesome, man. Really do appreciate that. You are the GOAT. I did see that you went balls deep on a gone inside the distance bet. I forget how much you said you put on. I think you said you put like 6K on it. And then you also had a huge win on DK. So 2 huge wins for the GOAT, Tajik Bey. We also have Jan in here. Great job, guys. UFC 265 predictions were amazing. Appreciate that a ton. Yeah, it was a great night. Can't wait to recap that. Ryan Grant in the chat. We are early. What is up, Ryan? How you doing? Big J in the chat as well. Congrats on the good week, DFS. Appreciate that, Big J. We have Sean in the chat saying Tajik. Let's go, Brady. Let's go, Sean. Hey, guys, love the show. Appreciate that. Dan in the chat. It would not be a Stat Digger show without Dan in the chat. Tajik doing Tajik things. At this point, it's beyond GOAT. Balls deep, yes, sir. We got Nigel Lee in the chat as well. All right, guys. So before we get into the card, it's UFC Vegas 34. Cannonier versus Gastelum. We'll do a quick recap of last week, and it was the best week I've had since I started tracking, plus 10.86 units. I'll quickly go through my bets. There was a ton of them. Had a 1-unit bet on Vince Morales, a 2.5-unit bet on Johnny Munoz, a fight doesn't go to decision bet on Ode Osborne, Manel Kopp. Also Manel Kopp inside the distance at plus 190. Also had the Angela Hill Torres fight goes the distance, 2.5 units on that, minus 235. This was the big one. Vicente Luque wins by submission, plus 1,400. Put a quarter unit on that. I was running around the house. That was exciting. And it was because of the show Stat Diggers. I mean, we talked about it, how pretty much all Chia's fights, they are in control time, whether it's him getting controlled or him doing the controlling. So I thought, hey, if Luque is going to win this fight, I think it's more so going to be a submission instead of a knockout, because Chiesa really doesn't give his opponents really opportunities to find that knockout. So other than that, the Miles Johns Dos Santos under 2.5 hit, plus 160. Johnny Munoz inside the distance. Derek Lewis, Cyril Gahn fight ends in a KO, 1.5 units on that. Johnny Munoz, Jamie Simmons fight doesn't go to decision. And then also Cyril Gahn was inside the distance. And I think I touched on all the wins. So those were the wins. And then the 3 losses I had was a half-unit shot on Alonzo Menefield, wins by KO in round 1. A 1-unit shot on Menefield Herman under 1.5 rounds. And then Vincent Morales, Drake Rodriguez fight doesn't go to decision. So I had a ton of action. It worked out very, very well. And hopefully keep the momentum rolling into not next week, but in 2 weeks. So Uncle Weezy, first of all, what is up? How are you doing? Are you looking forward to the card in 2 weeks? And also, how was your night last night? How'd you do?
It was a pretty good night for me. My ass shaving of the night came through in flying colors there with a Johnny Munoz second round submission. One of my other favorite picks, which was the Aldo Munoz fight goes to decision, came through beautifully. I also had fight doesn't go to decision for Munoz Simmons. Fight goes to decision for Hill and Torres. And the only one that really kind of disappointed me was Michael Chiesa. I lost about 1.5 units on a decision bet and a money line bet with him. I had kind of unearthed a 36-1 prop on one of my balls deep breakdowns. I had Bobby Green to win in the 3rd round at 36-1. Come on, man. That was just too damn close. If that would have come through, it would have been over 12 units for me. So, but still, a positive unit night for me. I stayed really light on DK this week. Just had too much work to do to get all this ready for today's show, but we're ready to go. I got stats for 14 fights. There are some really interesting stylistic matchups on this card. I can't wait to talk about it, get into all these stats, go balls deep with everybody here tonight. This is going to be a good one, man.
Yeah, it's a very interesting card. I think there's a lot of interesting matchups. I think the card's gonna be very good. I think it's gonna be a very violent night as well. Maybe not the most name value, but just taking a look fight by fight, I think we're gonna have some bangers. So I'm looking forward to it. So I say we get started, guys. And we will start with the first fight of the night. And again, this card is in 2 weeks. I'm assuming we're going to probably lose a fight here or there. I'm assuming they're going to, rearrange the bout orders and all that, but this is what we have as of now. So as of now, the first fight of the night is Abdul Razak Al-Hassan going against Antonio Braganetto. We have Al-Hassan, who is 35 years old, 5'10", 73-inch reach, going against Braganetto, who is 33 years old, 6'3", 77-inch reach. As far as the last couple fights, Abdul Razak Al-Hassan is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He had a knockout win over Sabah, a knockout win over Nico, and then a decision loss to Munir Lazez, a knockout loss to Chaos Williams, and a decision loss to Jacob Malkoon. Just want to remind you guys that he was actually a big favorite in all 3 of those losses. Against Munir Lazez, he was I think it was like minus 300. Against Chaos Williams, I think it was like minus 250. And then against Jacob Malkoon, I think he was like minus 250. So, man, this guy has been dropping the ball. He's been absolutely dropping the ball. And now he's going against Antonio Braganetto, who is 2 in his last 5 fights. Did have a submission win over Anthony Smith, a submission win over Brock Larson, submission win prior to that, and then a decision loss to Clint Hester, and then a knockout loss to Trevin Giles. That fight was a while ago. I want to say that fight was like in 2018, like 3 years ago. So we have not seen Antonio Braganetto in a long time. I think it's a very interesting stylistic matchup, Uncle Weezy. You have Braganetto, who's going to want to get this fight down to the mat, and you have Al-Hassan, who's going to want to take his head off. So interesting fight. I'm looking forward to it. I'm expecting violence. What do you have for us here, Weezy?
Yeah, this is just a classic striker versus grappler matchup here. We've got Al-Hassan and Braganetto both on the wrong side of 30 here. A 4-inch height advantage for Braganetto. Braganetto is also the natural middleweight here. As we know that Al-Hassan has fought almost all of his career at welterweight. He had to take a lot of time off due to some allegations, personal life stuff that wound up being false. He was really dragged through the mud and had a rough time. And since he's come back from that, he hasn't been the same. He missed weight twice, lost both of his welterweight matches, missed weight by like 3 or 4 pounds each time. Then he was forced to go up a weight class to middleweight, and he got out-wrestled by Jacob Malkoon as like a minus 350, minus 400 favorite. If you guys go to my YouTube channel, one of the very first videos I ever did on there, which was my first ass shaving of the week video, was me predicting an ass shaving for Al-Hassan over Malkoon. And I just basically did a comedy bit for 15 minutes about how bad the stats were on Malkoon and how bad he looked against Philip Hawes, and how Al-Hassan has got all 10 of his wins are by knockout in the first round. The guy's got crazy power. Everything in that fight was just setting up for, Al-Hassan to kind of just walk all over Malkoon exactly the same way that Phil Hawes did. And he did nothing of the sort. And he just really hasn't been the same since he's come back from that couple-year layoff that was forced upon him. If I go to my notes here, I've got some advantages for both fighters. So for Al-Hassan, he's got a judo base. So it's not just this power striking that he has. He is a judo player, a high level one at that. He's got a good base. He can use upper level body takedowns. He's got 5 more UFC fights than Braganetto. He's fought over half of his pro career at the UFC level. He absolutely has savage knockout power. When he hits you, you go to sleep. 10 wins, all of them by first round knockouts. So he fights like he's double parked. He just gets in and out of there. And he is most dangerous early in the fight. He lands a knockdown in his 8 UFC fights on 3% of his significant strikes that land. That is 1.63 knockdowns per 15 minutes. And Braga Neto is coming off almost a 4-year layoff here. His last fight was in December of 2017 versus Trevin Giles, and he got savagely knocked out there in the third round. For Braga Neto, the advantages are that he's 2 years younger than Al Hassan. He's 4 inches taller, and he's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage here. So that tells us that Abdul Razak Al Hassan is not a natural middleweight. He is a welterweight that just seems to not be able to get his training in order and make weight anymore. So now he's been forced up 15 pounds to another weight class, and I don't know how much success he's going to have up here. Braga Neto's got 7 more years as a pro mixed martial artist. He started MMA at 10 years younger in life than Al Hassan did. So Al Hassan was doing judo while Braga Neto was doing MMA. 8 of 9 pro wins inside the distance for Braga Neto. He is a slick submission artist training with the Nogueira brothers. 7 of those 8 inside the distance wins are by submission, 1 of them by KO. He's shown a 63% striking defense thus far in the UFC, which is impressive and very good quality to have when you're facing up against somebody that hits as hard as Al Hassan does. And he's an aggressive wrestler and grappler. He averages 5.33 takedowns per fight. He's got 3.07 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he's out-controlling his opponents 39.4% to 9.95%. So he's out-controlling his opponents at a 4-to-1 ratio here, while Al Hassan is getting out-controlled by his opponents at a clip of 42.5% to 7.3%. And he gets taken down 5.16 times per 15 minutes. So there's definitely a path to victory via takedowns and control time for Braga Neto. And Antonio Braga Neto has fought the tougher level of UFC competition thus far. Better overall ratios and more experienced opponents. Guys like Anthony Smith, Trevin Giles, while Al Hassan's fighting mostly guys that have 1 or 2 fights. People like Chaos Williams, Jacob Malkoun, Lazez, Sabah Homasi. Really, he's only fought a couple of veterans in Omari Akhmedov and Nico Price. So it's just a really, really interesting stylistic striker versus grappler matchup here. I see this fight finishing inside the distance, most likely. If we add up the 7 losses for Al Hassan and Neto, only 2 times have these guys been finished inside the distance. However, they're both prolific finishers on the offensive end, as 8 of 9 wins for Braga Neto and 10 of 10 wins for Al Hassan. So these guys have finished 18 of 19 pro wins, but they've only been finished 2 out of 7 pro losses. So maybe we might get some value there in the fight doesn't go to decision, because I could easily see this fight ending early with a Braga Neto submission or an Al Hassan knockout. What are you looking at in this one?
Yeah, the way I'm probably going to attack it is going to be an under bet, maybe like an under 1.5, or fight doesn't go to decision. I think it's pretty simple to break down. I mean, either, Antonio Braga Neto is able to get down Abdul Razak Al Hassan in that first round and submit him, or Al Hassan, knocks his head off in that first round. I think both going to happen. For me, man, I mean, I'm probably going to, as far as like a pick goes, I'll probably take Braga Neto as an underdog here. We see him opening up as a huge underdog. I can't believe this. They actually opened up Abdul Razak Al Hassan as a minus 270 favorite. And somebody mentioned in the chat, he shouldn't be a big favorite over anyone, really. I mean, he's looked awful as of late. He's been dropping the ball. So, quickly money has came in on Antonio Braga Neto, and rightfully so. We now see Al Hassan at minus 127, and we now see Braga Neto at plus 107. I'll pick the dog here, but for me, I'm going to be really looking forward to looking at some violence props under 1.5. The fight does not start round 3. The fight doesn't go to decision. I think someone's getting finished here. For me, I will say that Braga Neto is able to get him down early. We saw Jacob Malkoun. I couldn't believe it. I was like shocked watching that fight. Malkoun was able to take him down 8 times, and then he was able to control him for like 12 minutes of the fight. If Braga Neto gets you down, you're probably going to get submitted. So I'll take Braga Neto as far as like a straight pick goes. But for me, I am extremely interested in a violence prop, Uncle Weezy.
I love the violence prop here as well, because in that striker versus grappler realm that we're in with this fight, you could easily see Braganetto, who's not a comfortable striker, getting knocked out, and you could easily see Alhassan with that piss poor takedown defense. I mean, Jacob Malkoun ragdolled him. Jacob Malkoun, come on, man. That's just, we can't do it. I like Braganetto actually quite a bit here, even with the 4-year layoff. He's still the younger guy. He's still the natural middleweight. I mean, Alhassan's just a blown up welterweight, and we just haven't seen the same fighter. But if you don't have faith in Braganetto coming off this layoff, then you can easily still just say, let's bet that fight doesn't go to decision, whatever we see that line at. And then, that'll cover both sides. That covers the Braganetto early submission, and it covers the early starching from Alhassan, which we've seen so much of in his career. So, yeah, I see, for the very first fight of the night, I really am leaning heavily here on the Braganetto side, and I love the fight doesn't go to decision line. And it feels so much to me like last week's fight, where I was so positive about the Munoz's grappling and ability to be able to finish that fight early that I bet Munoz inside the distance, and I bet the fight doesn't go to decision. I'm feeling the same thing here with the Braganetto and the fight doesn't go to decision.
Yeah, I like it quite a bit. So that's going to be something I'm looking at. Hopefully we get a good price on it. Like you mentioned, both guys, not typically somebody that's going to be getting finished, but just stylistically, this seems like a fight that has a really good chance of finishing. So we do have a dono in the chat. What is up, Martians and Goblins, with the $5.99 dono? Appreciate that. He's saying, thanks for all the hard work, boys. We appreciate you as well, hanging out each and every Sunday. Really do appreciate all the support and appreciate the dono, man. But yeah, good fight. I think it's going to be a fun fight, but I do think it ends pretty quickly, to be honest. Okay, next fight. Oh, my goodness. We should pull up the 1-800-GAMBLER. And by the way, Weezy, a 1-800-GAMBLER actually saved me last week. We talked about, I was very interested in betting Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and the 1-800-GAMBLER ticker, it actually talked me out of it. And thank goodness, because, man, did she fight like an idiot in that fight. So another instance where I'm definitely pulling up the 1-800-GAMBLER. We'll kind of talk about why, and especially after seeing the price tag, it's a fight I want to stay away from. But we do have Courtney Casey going against Luana Jojua. We have Courtney Casey, who is 34 years old, 5'7", 67-inch reach, going against Jojua. She is 26 years old, 5'4", with a 62-inch reach. So Casey's going to be the bigger fighter, 3 inches of height and 5 inches of reach as well. One thing I want to note as well, I'm sure you're going to talk about it, but man, Courtney Casey is 9-9. She is 9-9. Just crazy. It's crazy. I did think she won her last fight against JJ Aldrich, though, but still, 9-9. Come on. But she did have a split decision loss to JJ Aldrich in her last fight. She got submitted by Jillian Robertson prior to that. She had a submission win over Mara Morella, a decision loss to Cynthia Calvillo, and a split decision win over Angela Hill. She is 2-3 in her last 5 fights. Luana Jojua, I believe she made her UFC debut against Sarah Moras, and she not only lost to Sarah Moras, she got dominated and TKO'd in that fight. A terrible, terrible look. Sarah Moras is not great. And then she did have a submission win over Diana Belbita as an underdog in a fight where Belbita had to do one thing, and that was not take down Jojua. She takes down Jojua, and she gets armbarred, and then a cut stoppage loss after that first round to Miranda Maverick. So interesting fight. For me, I can't trust either of these fighters. Honestly, I don't think Jojua is that great. She's good looking. I think, people might potentially bet her because of that, because she is going to be the better looking fighter for sure. It's just looking at her skill set. She has good submissions, but man, Courtney Casey, although she is 9-9, she's fighting a lot better competition. A split decision win over Angela Hill, that goes a long way. Whereas, Luana Jojua is getting knocked out by Sarah Moras. So for me, I like Courtney Casey. I'll say it right off the bat, but I'll talk about the odds when you're done, Weezy, and it's going to probably shock a lot of you.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm just going to go right into my notes here, because I just kind of tried to boil this down to as little bit, we wouldn't have to talk about it as much as we need to. But so for Casey, I've got a 3-inch height advantage and a 5-inch reach advantage. She's the much bigger woman here. She's got 6 more pro fights. She's got 130 more minutes of professional cage time, and she's got 2 more years as a pro. Casey's fought about 75% of her pro career at the UFC level. And so we see that 9-9 record, and you think, oh, 9-9, but she's been at the highest level for pretty much her entire career. She basically started in the UFC almost, So while her UFC record and her overall record isn't fantastic, Casey's fought 75% of her pro career at the UFC level, and Liana Jojua has only fought 25% of her pro career at the UFC level. And still, she's lost 2 fights outside of the UFC, one of them to Na Liang and Young Lu Feng in that promotion over in China. Casey has 10 more UFC fights than Jojua. 13 UFC fights for Casey, only 3 for Jojua, and 140 more minutes in the UFC cage time. So what I'm saying here is there's a big experience advantage for Casey here. She's obviously been fighting a way higher percentage of her career against the top level competition, while we've seen Liana Jojua have 3 fights in the UFC, and the only win that she got was against Diana Belbita, and it was a direct result of poor cage IQ by Diana. A 77% finish rate as a pro for Courtney Casey. That's 4 submissions and 3 KOs, so she can get it done a number of different ways. She's only been finished in 2 out of 9 losses, so she's super tough. And only 1 of her 6 UFC losses has happened inside the distance. She lands more strikes than she absorbs. She's landing 4.33 and only absorbing 4.19. And let's keep in mind that she's 3-6 in the UFC, or no, 5-8 in the UFC. So she's lost 3 more fights than she's won. However, she's still landing more than she absorbs. She's only been knocked down once in 672 strikes absorbed, while Jojua absorbs 2.33 more significant strikes per minute than she lands. 4.86 is what she absorbs. 2.53 is what she lands. So it looks like Casey will have a significant striking advantage in this fight. Plus, Casey has fantastic leg kicks. She's a former soccer player, and we know those soccer players like Jose Aldo and Courtney Casey, they can blast your fucking legs. And Casey has fought, obviously, the more experienced, tougher competition in the UFC. For Jojua, she's 8 years younger. So obviously they're in different career trajectories at this point. And Liana Jojua has an 87.5% finish rate in her own right as a pro. 7 of 8 inside the distance, 6 of them by submission, 1 of them by knockout. I believe, 5 of those submissions are by armbar, which is why it was so fucking stupid for Diana Belbita to dive into her guard. That was just unbelievable that she did that. And hopefully Courtney Casey doesn't do anything so stupid. Hopefully she realizes that she's got a significant striking advantage in this match and that she can keep it standing, because if she goes down to the ground with Jojua, as good as Casey is on the ground and as many submission wins she has at a higher level, it would just put the fight into a place where Jojua is going to be a lot more comfortable naturally. 5 wins by armbar, 1 by heel hook for Jojua. So she can get you, a number of different ways, not just the armbar, those champagne submissions, heel hooks, things like that. Very interesting. And Jojua is very active with submission attempts. She's averaging 2.98 per 15 minutes. And Courtney Casey, the problem with her is that she's shown a 38.64% takedown defense. So if Liana wants to get this to the ground, she should be able to. Casey gets out-controlled 34.19% to only 5.85% in her UFC career. I mean, that is almost 6-1. She's being out-controlled by her opponents. So that path to victory for Jojua is actually there. Takedowns against a woman with sub 40% takedown defense, a woman in Casey that's getting out controlled 6-1 by her opponents. So, and then not only that, 6 of her 8 wins professionally are by submission, 5 by armbar, 1 by heel hook. So not only could she get the fight to the ground, but she could probably be active when she's down there trying to finish the fight. So yeah, this is a pretty interesting stylistic matchup. As good of a grappler as Casey is, I believe that Jojua is going to have the submission edge here. And we could see and call this a striker versus grappler matchup, even though, Casey isn't really a traditional striker. Jojua definitely is a grappler. And if Casey keeps it standing, I like her chances. If this goes to the ground, I think Jojua is going to have a much better chance to win. Which way are you looking on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I like Casey quite a bit, but I just don't really like the line at all. I was actually kind of surprised when I did see the line. We have Courtney Casey as a. Oh, I'm on the wrong thing. Oops, my bad, guys. My bad. Okay, we have, there it is. Okay, so we have Courtney Casey opening up as a minus 150 favorite, currently minus 200. The one Jojua opening up as a plus 130 favorite and currently plus 170. Can't trust Casey at minus 200. I would never bet that in my life, but I think it's a good matchup for her. Like outside of, you talked about getting armbar from guard, what I don't like from the Luana Jojua side is I definitely agree that if she does want to get this fight down to the match, she can. But just seeing her like in her 3 UFC fights, right? She has 0 takedowns attempted. I know a couple of those did end early, but still, I thought she was going to go out there and try to take down a Miranda Maverick. Instead, she was getting pieced up for 5 minutes up until she got a cut stoppage there. So, yeah, if she goes for takedowns here, I do think she has a shot, but just not something she really does. I'll take Casey. Not much confidence. Minus 200 is pretty crazy. Somebody mentioned in the chat the fight doesn't go to decision. Could be interesting depending on the price. You mentioned the finish rates. Luana Jojua, a 88% finish rate. Courtney Casey, 77%. Courtney Casey has been submitted 2 times, so the armbar from guard is definitely live from the Jojua side. And as far as Jojua, she has been knocked out 2 times, and she has been submitted once, finished in 3 of her 4 losses. And you mentioned Courtney Casey, a 77% finish rate. So I'll be taking a close look at that fight doesn't go to decision line. Depending on the price, it might be worth a little sprinkle there.
Yeah, because you could see a fight doesn't go, especially for a women's fight, being, plus 200 even.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it'll be that much, but for instance, we saw what the fight goes to decision for the Hill Torres was like what minus 430 by the end of the day. I mean, these women's fights are, people usually just land on the fight goes to decision here, but if you look, there's a path to victory for Jojua by submission, and there's definitely a path to victory via submission or a knockout because Jojua has been finishing 3 of her 4 losses. So I think that the fight doesn't go for Casey Jojua could be a sneaky plus money spot.
It could be, but I really don't want to be too invested with this fight, but it could be something to look at for sure. So I'll take off the 100 Gambler banner, and we shall move on to the next fight. We have an interesting fight, a close fight on paper at least. You have Roosevelt Roberts going against Ignacio Bajo-Mendez. We have Roberts, who is 27 years old, 6'2", 73-inch reach. Ignacio Bajo-Mendez is 23 years old, very young, 6'3" with a 75-inch reach. We'll take a look at their last couple fights. We have Roosevelt Roberts, who is 2-1, no contest in his last 5 fights. Had a decision loss to Vinc Pichel, a decision win over Alexandre Yakovlev, a submission win over Brock Weaver, a submission loss to Jim Miller, and he was a big favorite in that fight. And then a finish loss to Kevin Croom. I don't know if it was a submission or a knockout, but Croom went in there with like in the first 60 seconds and finished Roosevelt Roberts. I think Roberts was like something crazy, like minus 400 against Kevin Croom. Croom came in on like a couple days short notice, and Croom put him out. So yeah, Roosevelt Roberts has been dropping the ball in his last 2 fights. That submission loss in Miller, and then especially losing to Kevin Croom. Like that's a very, very bad look. But I mean, I think the guy's skilled. I think he's talented, really solid striker, a very good grappler as well. I think he's very well rounded. It's just he has been dropping the ball as of late. And speaking of dropping the ball, Ignacio Bajo-Mendez was a pretty decent favorite himself coming into the UFC against John McDessie. Came off the Contender Series off of a knockout, and he was a pretty big favorite himself. Lost to John McDessie. I believe he did get hurt in that first round, but he showed a ton of toughness to be able to finish the fight. And he did lose the fight, but he did show a lot of things that I did like. And he's a very good striker himself. I think it's a very competitive fight on paper. I think it's a very close fight, and the line definitely indicates that as well. So, Uncle Weezy, what do you have for us here on this one?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Like you say, Robert's been dropping the ball lately, and then Bajo-Mendez was probably a little bit too big of a favorite against McDessie. I was on Bajo-Mendez. I thought he was going to, he's just such a good striker, and McDessie's not really known for his grappling. Usually the path to beat Bajo-Mendez in the past has been to grapple him because he is a stand-up guy. Great kickboxer, great length, very big for 155 pounds. And he had something like a 9-inch reach advantage over McDessie in that last fight, but McDessie just walked forward the entire time. He hurt him badly in the first round, and then Bajo-Mendez never really recovered, but he did show a lot of heart, and that wound up being a pretty close fight. Even though, but Bahamondes is a really good striker. Roosevelt Roberts is a guy who can put it together pretty well. He's got some submissions. He's got some knockouts. He's kind of dangerous everywhere. But let me go into the notes here and I'll let you know what I got for advantages for each of these guys. So we'll start with Roberts. Roosevelt has fought almost 2/3 of his pro career at the UFC level so far. So even though he's very young, he's only 27 years old. This guy kind of had a lot of hype behind him right away. He's obviously a very talented guy, and he's been fighting a very high percentage of his career up here at the highest level. He's finished 80% of his pro wins inside the distance. That's 8 out of 10, 5 submissions and 3 knockouts. So he's an equal opportunity finisher. In the UFC thus far, he's landing more strikes than he absorbs. He's got 49.17% striking accuracy, and he's landing 3.03 significant strikes per minute while only absorbing 2.27. And he's been a really efficient wrestling. Even though he's just under 2 takedown attempts per fight, he's getting those takedowns at a 53.33% clip. So he's completed 8 out of 15 takedown attempts. He's averaging 1.75 takedowns per 15 minutes and 1.1 submission attempts per 15 minutes. So, he's active once he does get it into the grappling realm and into control time positions. He's active with submission attempts, trying to finish the fight. And he's got 25.24% control time as well, which is pretty good. And he's definitely fought the tougher level of competition thus far in the UFC. For Bahamondes, he's 4 years younger. This guy is really at the beginning of his career. Only 23 years old is Bahamondes. He's going to be 1 inch taller, and he's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage here. He's slightly more experienced as a pro, despite being 4 years younger than Roberts. He's got a 73% finish rate in his own right as a professional, all of them coming by way of knockout. So Bahamondes is a very, very good kickboxer, very accurate striker, throws with a lot of volume and a lot of diversity. You don't really see the same attacks twice. Very flashy attacks as well. And that long reach allows him to hit you when you can't hit him. And so it's really going to be up to Roosevelt Roberts to try to pressure Ignacio Bahamondes in this fight, because if he watched that Makdessi fight, you could see that Bahamondes is fully capable of fighting off of his back foot and getting on his bike and using his footwork and picking you apart from the outside. But he's clearly not as comfortable doing that as he is when somebody just stands in front of him and allows him to just kind of open up the full range of his arsenal and use all of those attacks. So he's got crazy volume and output, does Bahamondes, so far in the UFC. He's attempting 19.27 significant strikes per minute, and he's landing 7.91 of them. And he's even showing decent power thus far. He's landed 1 knockdown in 178 significant strikes landed. And Roberts has been knocked down on 0.65% of the significant strikes landed against him. Bahamondes has shown 100% takedown defense thus far in the UFC, which will be useful if he can keep it there. 5 takedowns have been defended successfully, so his opponents are 0 of 5 on him. And over 90% of Bahamondes' 2 UFC level fights have taken place in the center of the cage. That's very important. Being as competent of a striker as Bahamondes is, for him to keep this fight standing, keeping it in the center of the cage is going to be a big key for success to him. And if he can do that like he's done in the first 2 fights, over 90%, he's going to have a really good chance to beat Roosevelt Roberts here, because he'll be more comfortable in the striking exchanges. Let me see what else I got for you guys, if anything that's sticking out here in the numbers. I mean, Bahamondes really has only fought John Makdessi in the UFC. His fight prior to that on the Contender Series was against Edson Gomez, and really that was not a UFC level opponent there. So I think that, people got a little bit over their skis, and kind of that line got a little bit wide for the Makdessi fight. I think Bahamondes might have been a minus 200 favorite there, but that Edson Gomez win wasn't very great. And then prior to that, he beat Chris Brown by split decision. And we see Roberts has been fighting the higher level of competition for sure. Fighting guys with an average of 7.25 fights, 3 total fights in the wins, but 21 total fights in the losses. So the guys that he's losing to are definitely legit. Very interesting fight here. If Roosevelt can kind of get it to the clinch or to the ground, he'll definitely have a big advantage here. And if Bahamondes is able to keep it standing, I think he's going to look very good here. Which side are you landing on here?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. Kind of like a striker versus grappler, although I think Roosevelt Roberts has some good striking, but he's going to want to get this fight down to the mat. So something interesting to note is I was with you. I thought Ignacio Bahamondes was going to win. I didn't bet him or anything because I did have some question marks, but the reason why I liked Bahamondes so much because John Makdessi in his entire UFC career has never landed a takedown. So I thought, okay, Makdessi's going to strike with him for 15 minutes. I thought Bahamondes can definitely win that fight. But in this fight, I do think that Roosevelt Roberts is going to go for takedowns here. And if he does, I do have some serious questions about Bahamondes in his takedown defense and his ground game as well. And Roberts is great on the mat. I think he's like a brown belt in BJJ, very slick on the mat. Great submissions as well. And if he can get it down to the mat, I think he can have a decent advantage. I think it might be a buy low spot here on Roosevelt Roberts after he's completely screwed up the last two times as a big favorite here. And now we do see the line. We actually opened up as an underdog. He opened up at plus 140. He's now minus 130. I saw minus 110 last night. So money is starting to come in on Roosevelt Roberts. Ignacio Bahamondes opened up minus 160. He is now a plus 110 dog. So I do agree with that line flip there. I got to do a little bit more tape on it. I want to see, a little bit more on Bahamondes off his back. I want to see a little bit more on Roberts as well, but might be an interesting spot. If Roberts does get this down to the mat, I think he can have a really significant advantage. But like you said, if this stays standing for 15 minutes, it's going to be Bahamondes having the advantage there. I just don't really think that happens. So for me, I am on the Roberts side myself. Don't know if I'll bet it yet. I got to look into it a little bit more, but it is sticking out. In terms of like the over/under, no strong lean either way. I can definitely see this going to the distance. But maybe a fighting decision could be interesting as well. You talked about the finish rates, both guys finishers, both guys can be finished. The pick for me is going to be Roberts in a potential bet.
Potential bet, huh? Yeah, this God, man, I would have a very hard time betting this fight. I don't see much in, not having a line for the fight goes to decision or not. I'm not really seeing which way I'm leaning there. And then even then, the one thing that would have me leaning Roberts in this case is the fact that Bahamondes, those 5 takedown attempts that he did stuff, they were against Edson Gomez. And like I say, that guy Gomez just wasn't UFC level. So if we see a guy like Roosevelt Roberts, who's boasting a over 50% takedown accuracy, start to go to the grappling, and if we know that Roberts is going to do that, I think that he could have a huge advantage here. Not to mention, let's look at Makdessi and Gomez, Bahamondes' last opponents. I mean, we're talking about a 6'3" Ignacio Bahamondes fighting guys that were like 5'7", 5'8". Roosevelt Roberts is 6'2". So we could potentially see a guy in Roberts who can handle the range almost as well as Ignacio standing. But like we said, if he does go to those takedown attempts, are we going to see Bahamondes, who has 100% takedown defense thus far in the UFC, are we going to see that maybe is way overinflated due to the fact it was against a terrible opponent? That's going to be a wait and see. But yeah, I think I'm leaning Roberts here because I do see him eventually getting this to the ground and putting Bahamondes where he's not that comfortable.
Yeah, I just personally think like the levels on the mat is going to be like a huge discrepancy. Like Roberts, his ground game is legit. Yes, he got submitted by Jim Miller, but no shame in that, really. Yes, he got submitted by Kevin Kroom. There is some shame in that, but still, I think he has a good shot to win here as long as he fights smart and gets down to the mat. So the pick for me will be Roberts. I will be taking a look throughout the next 2 weeks, to see where that line does move. I'm very curious to see where it does move there. So we'll get to the next fight, and this might sound weird, Uncle Weezy, but this is probably the fight I'm most looking forward to. Like, I think this fight's going to be an absolute war, and we'll definitely talk about why, but I'm so excited to see this fight. I'm so excited for the debut of Mana Martinez, somebody with a 100% finish rate. I believe like the majority of his wins have all came in the first round. Plenty of wins under 60 seconds as well. This guy's very exciting. And on the flip side, Jesse Strader, who's exciting in his own right, a finisher in his own right. I think these guys are just going to stand in the middle and bang until one man falls. It's going to be an all-out war. Now, I'm looking forward to it, Uncle Weezy. It's a violent spot that I definitely have circled as well. So we do have Mana Martinez. He is 25 years old, very young. 5'10" with a 70-inch reach, going against Jesse Strader, who is 30 years old, 5'7" with a 70-inch reach. So Martinez is going to be a little bit taller there by 3 inches. In terms of the last couple fights, Mana is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. That one loss coming to Draco Rodriguez. It was a first-round submission. No shame in that. But after that, he did go out and get 2 knockout wins and eventually was signed to the UFC. As far as Jesse Strader, he did make his UFC debut against Montel Jackson and got knocked out in the first round there. Prior to that, a knockout win, a knockout win, a knockout loss, and a decision win, 3-2 in his last 5 fights. So, like I said, Weezy, am I crazy for looking forward to this one? I think it's going to be a good fight, man.
Yeah. So when I started, I just go fight by fight. I do the data entry for the athletes I need to do it for. And when I saw, Mana Martinez versus Jesse Strader, I just kind of sighed. I'm like, oh, come on. Really? These guys, Mana Martinez lost to Draco Rodriguez on the Contender Series, and Strader, I don't even know why he got a UFC fight in the first place. But then when you dive a little deeper, this dude Martinez is a killer, man. He's like the little version of Abdul Razak Al Hassan, man. 8 wins, all of them by knockout. And let's just go through these knockouts because this is really fun. It's he's an Austin Lingo type who we're going to talk about later on in the card. But Jose Johnson, win in the first round in 32 seconds, punches. Win over Casey Jones, who might have been high on cocaine. First 1 minute in the first round there. Win over David Rivera, left hook, 51 seconds left, or 51 seconds into the second round. Ricky Tercios, win at 2:59 of round 1. Jarrett Walden, win of 24 seconds of round 1. Casey Jones again, 2:25 round 1. Eric Hendon, 2 minutes round 2. Clarence Brown, 52 seconds round 2. This guy is just absolutely starching people. Everybody inside the distance. If he doesn't get you in the first, he gets you in the first minute of the second. So, yeah, some serious power here. And then if we're looking at Strader, there's not a whole lot to hang our hat on with Strader. There's not a lot of experience for both of these guys combined. But if I just go through the advantages here, for Mana Martinez, he is 5 years younger. He's going to have a 3-inch height advantage here over Jesse Strader. He's got 3 more pro fights than Strader and 1 more year as a pro. So he's the more experienced guy. He's the bigger guy. All 8 of Martinez's pro wins are inside the distance and by knockout. And both of Strader's losses are by KO. So beautiful path to victory there for Mana Martinez by KO. It's one of those places where we're going to be able to find some value. If you're really on the Martinez side, it might be good just to bet him by KO because you get a big bump. But we're talking about 8 pro wins and 2 pro losses from Strader, all ended inside the distance by knockout. So we can get a little bit of value there in the betting lines. Strader's been knocked down on 13.33% of the significant strikes that he's absorbed thus far in the UFC. Granted, it was against a much higher level opponent in Montel Jackson. And Martinez has fought the better level of competition, has a pre-UFC win over Ricky Tercios, while every step up that Strader has taken in his career resulted in a loss against guys like Marcelo Rojo and Montel Jackson. And if we look at Strader, the only thing I could really come up with when I'm looking at the numbers is that 4 of his 5 pro wins are inside the distance and by knockout. So clearly the guy is also a finisher, just like Mana Martinez is. So we're talking about between 13 wins that these guys share, 12 of them inside the distance. And with the 4 losses that these guys share, 3 of them are inside the distance. So this is one that's just screaming violence. It's screaming knockout. It's screaming inside the distance. On paper, it kind of looks shitty, but then I think when you really look into the numbers, man, it looks like it's going to be a really exciting fight with somebody, looking up at the lights, wondering what the fuck happened, man. It should be a good one.
Dude, I'm excited for this fight. I'm excited for some violence as well. If you guys know me, you guys know that I absolutely love violence. I don't think Jesse Strader's is UFC caliber, like you mentioned. I am not really sure why he did get signed. But I do think Mana Martinez this is somebody that they've been looking at for a while to potentially sign, and they finally signed him. And how can you not? The guy's a finisher. The guy hits like a truck. The guy I think he's really good. I think his ground game's solid as well. In that Rodriguez fight, yes, he did get submitted, but he did show some good things. He threw up a couple submissions. He actually did reverse Rodriguez as well, which was nice to see, but did get caught in, I believe it was a triangle or an armbar against Rodriguez there. But still, I like him in this fight. Jesse Strader, not the best striker. He has some good wrestling, but I kind of question his ground game. I saw some fights where he'd be able to get takedowns, but he wouldn't follow his opponent down to the mat. It'd be so weird. He'd go for a takedown, he'd get it, and then he'd stand up right away. and then just rinse and repeat that like 5 or 6 times. So question marks about his ground game, question marks about his striking defense, question marks about his chin. He's been knocked out 2 times, and man, does Mana hit very, very hard. But on the flip side, like Strader, like he can crack as well. He's a finisher as well. So instead of really betting aside here, I think the best option is going to be the under. I'm really hoping Uncle Weezy, they open it up at 2.5 rounds. I'm really, really hoping they do. So we'll definitely see. But man, I'm liking the under. I'm liking the fight doesn't go. And I'm kind of interested in this line of Mana Martinez. So he opened up at minus 180. He went to minus 175, back at minus 180. And then Jesse Strader is plus 155. I kind of think that could be a little bit wider. But with that said, Strader is dangerous, so I get it. But yeah, me, Uncle Weezy, I'm looking for violence. I'm hoping they said, hopefully the odds makers aren't watching the show, because I'm hoping they do set it at 2.5 rounds. I'm going to be taking the under, and I'll take it all day there.
Yeah, I agree, man. That under is just something that I'm going to definitely be smashing. I mean, but it's got to be at 1.5, right? I mean, they're probably going to put it at 1.5, but let's hope that they don't. Let's hope that they put it at 2.5, and we can get a nice juicy spot to slam, because this thing is going to finish inside the distance.
100%. And I think it can even finish in first round. So I'm going to also look at the Mana KO prop, like you mentioned, maybe Mana in the first round as well. I really don't see this getting extended. Just like the way these guys fight, I think they're just going to stand in the middle and bang until one man falls. And we are back in the small cage, right, Uncle Weezy? In the Apex, right?
Yeah, this is UFC Vegas, and it is not a live crowd. So yeah, small cage. Yeah, man. Oh boy, this is a great violent spot.
Hoping for a good line on it. So that's the benefit of being early, Uncle Weezy, is we know our spots, we know what we want to bet, and if we do see value, we'll take it right away. So I'm gonna be refreshing my bookie nonstop to hopefully open up soon. I'm ready to hit the under. All right, so we shall move on here. We do have 140 here. Appreciate you all hanging out. If you guys can hit the like, that'd be much, much appreciated. Going over UFC Vegas 34, a fight card that is in 2 weeks. I believe August 21st. We're taking the week off the next week. No stat diggers on Sunday next week. We wanted to get it out extra early, because why not? Why not? No days off. So we shall get to the next fight, and we have, goodness, man. Oh no. Bam Malecki, 2-0. Bam Malecki going against Josiane Nunes. We have Malecki, who is 29 years old, 5'9", 74-inch reach, going against Josiane Nunes, 27, 5'2", 67-inch reach. And some things to point out is Bam Malecki is going to have a 7-inch height advantage, and Bam Malecki is going to have a 7-inch reach advantage as well. So Nunes was supposed to make her UFC debut against Zara Farron, and I did bet Zara Farron as a pretty decent sized dog, basically because Farron was going to be just so much bigger than Nunes. I mean, Nunes is so small. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if she is even smaller than 5'2". Like, watching her on tape, like she looks like she's like 5 foot. Like, she is very small. I think they're lying about her reach as well. I don't see it being 67 inches. She's a small fighter, but what I will say, she goes after it. She does hit pretty hard. I've seen her knock fighters out cold. Mind you, they, most of them are soccer moms, but still, she has some power. Bam Malecki did make her UFC debut against Duda Santana, got a submission win, and then she also had a decision win over Veronica Macedo as a decent dog size there, as well. And as far as Josiane Nunes, she is on a 5-fight winning streak. Obviously, she has 1 loss, but she's on a 5-fight win streak and a 5-fight knockout streak. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting one, Weezy. I cannot wait to see the weigh-ins, because man, Bam Malecki is huge for the division, and Josiane Nunes is very, very small for the division. I think it's going to look hilarious on the scales.
Yeah, I think this is going to be hilarious, period. You got, Bam Malecki, who's a former Swedish model turned kickboxer, fighting a woman who would be a model if we were looking for females that look exactly like Joseph Benavidez. I mean, like, even the haircut is exactly the same. It's just, and then you highlighted that, the height and the reach advantages. It looks like it's going to look like they're going to in, completely different weight classes here too. I mean, I'm just going to get straight to my notes. Let's get right into the meat of it here. Bam Malecki, 7 inches taller, 7-inch reach advantage. 100% of her pro experience is at the UFC level. That's because she only has 2 fights, and she was on the Ultimate Fighter when they were doing the 145-pound weight class edition of that. She had a fight there. She lost to Leah Letson. It was an exhibition fight, though, so it doesn't count in her professional record. And she's an excellent striker, Bea Malecki is, who uses her length well. She attempts 14.47 significant strikes a minute, and she's outlanding her opponent 6.78 to 6.14. And she's shown a 63% striking defense thus far in the UFC. And that's a really important stat in a small sample size here, simply because Nunes is so small, it's going to be really difficult for her to get on the inside anyway. And against bigger opponents, Malecki has been able to she's shown that she can kind of strike and keep her opponents at bay, use that length that she does have to help her striking defense. And it shows in the numbers at 63% striking defense. She's successfully defended 11 of 14 takedown attempts as well. So she's got a 78.57% takedown defense. She's been controlled for less than 3 minutes of UFC cage time on those 3 takedowns. So not only when she gets taken, not only is she stopping most of the takedown attempts, but when she does get taken down, she is getting right back up. If we're looking at Nunes' advantages here, she's the far more handsome fighter here. She's got a haircut you could set your watch to. I don't know if anybody's ever seen Joseph Benavidez and Josiane Nunes in the same room at the same time, but that would be an interesting thing to see. I'd be kind of shocked if I did see that. But she's 2 years younger. She's got 6 more pro fights and almost 6 more years as a pro here. So she's actually the far more experienced mixed martial artist here. 6 to 7 pro wins are by knockout, and she has never been finished. And her only pro loss thus far is to Taylor Santos, who we know how tough Taylor Santos is and how bright her future is in the UFC. So, yeah, an interesting size matchup. I don't know much about Nunes. Like, it was funny. We were talking about this fight when she was supposed to fight Zara Farron, and you were telling me that you were thinking about gambling on it. I was like, I'm going to send the fucking orderlies over there, dude. But you made the bet. You did make the bet, but it wound up getting called off because Zara couldn't make weight. But that would have been even a bigger height discrepancy. So I'm sure Nunes is used to fighting much bigger opponents. But the problem is here, like you had mentioned, some of those women that she beat, I mean, they were like you said, like soccer moms. I mean, they 0-0 fighters who legitimately did not look like they should have been anywhere near a cage. Like, if there was a sanctioning body, they would have been like, no, we're not letting you fight. So I don't know, man. This might be the 1-800 gambler. I think is a good feel for this fight as a whole. I think it's a 1-800 gambler fight. What are you thinking?
Yeah, like I said, I did bet Zara Farron, who I actually think Malecki is better than Zara Farron. I think Zara Farron's not good, but I did think Farron did have some advantages in that fight, mostly being how much bigger she was. But same thing with Malecki. So believe it or not, Malecki actually is a world champ in Muay Thai. And that was very interesting to see there. She's not bad. She has good striking, lots of volume as well from Malecki. And I noticed that she's very heavy on top. So if she can't get this fight down to the mat, which she has not officially shot a takedown yet, I don't believe, but man, if she can get a takedown and get on top, I think she's going to have a ton of success against a much, much smaller Nunes who has no takedown defense, has no get-up game. I've seen her get taken down and laid on for minutes at a time, so that can be kind of a path to victory there. Also nice to see Malecki does have a submission on her record as well, so I think that can kind of be a path to victory. But even like on the feet, like Nunes is probably going to be landing the harder shots, but man, that 7-inch reach advantage, and it's probably even bigger than that. I mean, Nunes looks so small on tape. Even when we saw her at the weigh-in, she looked very, very small as well. So I honestly think they're lying about her height. I think she's even smaller than 5'2". So the reason I did bet Farron, though, was because she was a pretty decent-sized dog. I want to say I bet Farron at like plus 130. We do see, if I can find it here, we do see that Bea Malecki is a slight favorite, opening at minus 130. She has minus 120. And Nunes opened up plus 110. She's currently plus 100. So, not getting that underdog price tag, but I do think that Bea Malecki does win this fight. If this fight finishes, I do think it's more so going to be on the Nunes side. I'm curious to see where they do open up that fight, doesn't get the decision line at, because Nunes is a finisher. She does hit hard. Remind you, a lot of those finishes are against some very, very questionable competition. But I like Malecki here. I like the size. I like the striking. I like the volume. And if she can get this on the mat, I think she's going to have a big advantage being the much bigger fighter on top of a much smaller Nunes. So I think it's a good spot, but do I want to bet Malecki as a favorite? No, I do not, Uncle Weezy.
Yeah, I'm staying away from this one as a whole. I just don't know what to expect of Nunes. It's kind of a step up in competition for her, but she has fought Tyler Santos, and she's been doing this much longer. She's got way more experience and way more fights. So yeah, I don't see a clear path either way. I don't know enough about either fighter. There's not a lot of meat on the bone here, not a lot of experience, not a lot of data. I'm just staying away.
Yep, staying away is probably the best thing to do. I'm going to sit back and see where the line goes. If I can get Bay Malecki as an underdog for some reason, I will be probably taking the shot there, but I do expect the line to probably go in her favor more than likely, especially after people see the weigh-ins. I think a lot of money is going to come in on Malecki. It's going to look hilarious. They're going to look like 3 or even 4 weight classes apart. Like Malecki's huge for the division, and Nunes is very small for the division. All right, so moving along, we have a very interesting fight here. We have Hermes Brahimaj going against Sasha Palonikov. We have Brahimaj, who is 28 years old, 5'10", 72-inch reach, going against Sasha Palonikov, 32 years old, 6'1", 72-inch reach. Hermes Brahimaj made his UFC debut against Max Griffin, and this really confused me, Uncle Weezy, because you watch tape on this guy, and outside of the UFC, he's a very good wrestler, very good grappler, but he goes into the Max Griffin fight and attempts 0 takedowns and gets picked apart for 2.5 rounds up until he loses his ear. And it just shocked me. Like, he was somebody I didn't bet him, but I targeted him pretty heavy in DraftKings because I kind of expected him to, rinse and repeat takedowns, like kind of how he fights. But he went in there with like a weird game plan of just striking with Max Griffin and losing the fight. So that was weird. And going against Sasha Palonikov, who just got submitted by Impa Kasanganay, which sucked because I bet Impa by KO in that fight at like a crazy price at like plus 550. He hurt Sasha bad and then submits him. Prior to that, he did make his UFC debut against Luis Koski in a fight where he gets dropped bad in that first round. Almost gets finished, survives, and then Luis Koski has no gas tank and ends up getting a KO win himself. So Sasha is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, and Hermes Brahimaj is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Like, weird fight, Uncle Weezy. I'm not too high on either guy, really, especially after the debut of Brahimaj. Prior to the UFC, I kind of like what I saw from the guy, but the guy came in and just with really, really questionable fight IQ, in my opinion. And then as far as Sasha Palonikov, I don't think he's that great. Very, very questionable chin, very questionable striking. I don't think he's that great. I don't think he's that durable. So, man, I don't know. What do you think about this one, Uncle Weezy? Weird fight.
Yeah, striker versus grappler. Palatkov, great striker, and Hermes Brahimaj is so good on the ground, man. When you watch that pre-UFC tape of him, dude, he's so slick, which is what made that first fight in the UFC, that UFC debut, so perplexing. 0 takedown attempts. I mean, it just seems like when Max Griffin gets into any cage against any opponent, everybody's fight IQ goes down by like 95%. Remember Max Griffin when you were saying that you bet him against Condit in the last fight, and you told me before that fight, you go, I'm gonna be yelling at the TV, telling Max Griffin he needs to shoot more takedowns. And what did he do? He didn't shoot takedowns. And then you had Brahimaj, who is a very, very top-notch grappler, very slick on the ground. All of his pro wins by submission inside the distance, and he doesn't attempt 1 takedown against Max Griffin. So I just don't know what to think here. And not only that, Brahimaj trains over at Fortis. Saif Sayoud's his head coach. When you watched the Brahimaj Griffin fight, he wasn't screaming at him between rounds like, what the fuck are you doing? Why aren't you shooting takedowns? It was just a really perplexing game plan. And I guess Brahimaj did okay. I mean, that fight would have definitely went to decision had his ear not gotten ripped off. But Brahimaj was landing 3.73 significant strikes per minute, but absorbing 6.14. So he was obviously losing the striking exchanges, and it never occurred to him at any point during the entire 15 minutes that he was losing the striking exchanges not to shoot a takedown. So I don't know if that was the game plan that Saif Sayoud had set up for him. I sure hope not. And if I don't know if I can count on this guy to shoot takedowns, there's no way that I can bet Hermes Brahimaj as a striker. I'm sorry. It's just, that's not his distinctive competency. You're not a striker when you get 100% of your wins inside the distance by submission. This is just a weird one. Let me just go through my notes here for you guys, and then we can talk about it. Brahimaj advantages. He's 4 years younger. He's got 2 more pro fights and over 2 more years as a pro. All 8 of his pro wins are inside the distance and by submission, and Sasha has been finished in 100% of his pro losses. 1 of 3 losses were by finish, and that was because his ear was ripped off. So Brahimaj is a tough guy, and you're probably not going to finish him unless you remove one of his body parts. Palonikov, 3 inches taller. He's throwing a ton of volume so far in the UFC. He's averaging 14.33 significant attempts per minute, landing 7.58 of them. He's landing more strikes than he absorbs, 7.58 to 6.15. And he's shown 80% takedown defense thus far in the UFC, defending 12 of 15 takedown attempts in only 2 fights. So, yeah, there's not a whole lot of meat on the bone here. 1 UFC fight for Brahimaj, 2 for Palonikov, only 9 pro fights for Palonikov, only 11 pro fights for Brahimaj. This really does appear to be a striker versus grappler matchup. If Brahimaj wants to test Palotnikov's 80% takedown defense, that would probably be his best path to victory here. If Palotnikov can stop the takedowns, he'll probably have a pretty good chance to outstrike Brahimaj. Striker versus grappler, I just don't know which way I'm leaning. Can you help me out?
I don't know. It's a weird fight. Like I want to pick Brahimaj, and I probably will pick him, but if he goes out there again and it just doesn't shoot a takedown, like I don't know. I can't bet on this guy. We see him as a favorite, though. He is sitting at -130, opening up -110, and Palonikov opened up -110. He's currently +110. So Brahimaj is a slight favorite. I do agree with that. Hopefully he goes back and goes for some takedowns here in this fight. I do think he can get him. You did mention the 80% takedown defense of Palonikov. I think most of that was because Luis Koske shot like a ton of takedowns when he was like really gassed out. But I'll take Ramiz Brahimaj, but it's just hard to put money on the guy. Like if I knew he was going to come out here right and fight to a very good game plan, go for multiple takedowns, look for that finish, I'd probably take a shot on him. But just see him go out there for 15 or like 14 minutes against Max Griffin and shoot not one single takedown, that just has me like scratching my head. Like I just don't understand that. So the pick for me is Brahimaj. I think like if anything, maybe like a fight doesn't go to decision, maybe a violence. What were the finish rates between the two, Uncle Weezy, on those?
So for Brahimaj has got a 100% finish rate.
Yep.
Palonikov only 50%. So 6 wins for Palonikov, 3 of them by knockout, 3 by decision. But all of Palotnikov's losses have come inside the distance. For Brahimaj, only 1 of his 3 losses coming inside the distance. So 4 of 6 combined losses for these guys inside the distance, and 11 of 14 wins inside the distance.
Yeah, so that could be something to look at. But yeah, for me, I will pick Brahimaj. Just not much confidence. All right, so
I'm kind of the same way. I just don't have a lot of confidence in this fight either way. I'll have to really kind of look at all the tape.
Yeah, so we will move on, and we have a very interesting fight. I'm looking forward to this fight as well. We have Clay Guida going against Mark Madsen, Olympic caliber wrestler. This guy's very exciting, especially if you have him in your DraftKings lineups, because this guy goes for takedowns and a lot of them. Clay Guida, though, he is 39 years old. He has 5'7" with a 70-inch reach, going against Mark Madsen, who is 36 years old, 5'8", 72-inch reach. So Madsen's going to have a 1-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach advantage as well. In terms of their last couple fights, Mark Madsen does have a decision or knockout win over Danilo Bellardo and a decision win over Austin Hubbard in the UFC as well. That Hubbard fight, he looked very good early on. I think he got like 7 or 8 takedowns in that fight, and then Hubbard absolutely put it on him in that 3rd round. And that kind of what scares me about Mark Madsen is the guy's gas tank is not that great. So if this does get extended, if he's not able to finish Guida, I have serious concerns about this guy's cardio because it's really, really not great. Clay Guida, he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He did have a submission loss to Charles Oliveira, a decision win over BJ Penn, a submission loss over Jim Miller, and a decision loss to Bobby Green, and a decision win just recently against Michael Johnson, cashed as a dog there. So, yeah, interesting fight for this one, Uncle Weezy. I like Mark Madsen. I like his style, but the gas tank is giving me a serious pause in this one.
So let's talk about why, that's happening. Olympic wrestlers have 8-minute matches, and Mark Madsen, when he goes into the cage, he acts like an Olympic wrestler. He goes after takedowns over and over and over again. However, when you compete at that high of a level for that long of a time, your gas tank gets built up to handle an 8-minute match, not a 15-minute match. So we saw Mark Madsen wrestle like an absolute gorilla against Austin Hubbard for 2 rounds. And then at that 8.5-minute mark, 9-minute mark, when most wrestlers that have been wrestling for the entire time, you're going to see them gas out. And guess what? Clay Guida doesn't gas out. So this is a very interesting matchup. We know who the better wrestler is here. We do have a little bit of a clash, as Clay Guida is more of a freestyle wrestler, while Mark Madsen was a medalist and Greco-Roman wrestler. So freestyle wrestlers are going to be way more shooting for single and double leg takedowns, while Greco-Roman wrestlers will use body locks and trips and throws a lot more. So let's get into my notes here for this fight. Clay Guida, let's start with him. Obviously, a huge experience advantage here for Clay Guida. 46 more professional fights, over 450 more minutes in the cage, 11 more years as a pro, and over half of Clay's experience is at the UFC level. He's got fantastic conditioning, pace, and heart. He has all 3 in spades. He's got decent power in his hands for a lightweight. He's got a 0.68% knockdowns per total significant strikes rate. He's getting 0.26 knockdowns per 15 minutes. And he broke Rafael Dos Anjos' jaw a few fights before Dos Anjos became the lightweight championship. As a matter of fact, Clay Guida, in his earlier days, beat Anthony Pettis, who later became a champion in Anthony Pettis' UFC debut, and he beat Rafael Dos Anjos before Dos Anjos became a champion. So this guy has beaten champions in his time in the UFC. He's got a 64% UFC striking defense, and that's over a 30-fight sample size. So Clay Guida does have excellent striking defense. He's an active wrestler, is Guida. Over 6 takedown attempts per fight, 70 career UFC takedowns. He's got 41% control time while only being controlled 8.95% of the time. So he's out controlling his opponents at about a 4.5-to-1 ratio. Very impressive. And he's getting 3 takedowns per 15 minutes. He's fought, beaten, and lost to the tougher, more experienced competition, obviously. He's a UFC Hall of Famer. Now, Mark Madsen, on the other hand, is 3 years younger, 1 inch taller, and he's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage. He's going to be the bigger man here. And he's an Olympic silver medalist in Greco-Roman wrestling, and I think he also has 3 medals in Greco-Roman wrestling in some other games, not the Olympic games, but some other games where there's high-level wrestlers. 9 of 14 on his UFC takedown attempts. So he's getting takedown attempts at a rate where most people are defending them at 64.29%. And he's averaging a whopping 8.33 takedowns per 15 minutes. And he's in his UFC fights so far, he's gotten over 54% control time. So yeah, this is very good wrestler against elite wrestler. Clay Guida with a massive experience advantage, a massive level of competition advantage, a massive conditioning advantage. But Mark Madsen should absolutely dominate the first 2 rounds with his offensive wrestling, with his top game, and he's probably going to beat up Clay Guida pretty good, because as excellent as a wrestler as Clay Guida has been at the UFC level, now you're fighting a guy that is an Olympic medalist, and not only that, it's a Greco-Roman guy who medaled in Greco-Roman wrestling. Greco-Roman wrestling is flat out a better wrestling style, a lot of people would think, for mixed martial arts than freestyle is, because it's a lot safer takedowns, and it's the kind of takedowns that usually get your opponents back flat on the mat and allow you to be able to control them for longer periods of time. So Mark Madsen's going to have a serious wrestling advantage here, and he should absolutely win the first 2 rounds. What's going to be fascinating about this fight is that 3rd round, because we both know that if Clay Guida makes it out of the first two and he's still in pretty decent shape, he hasn't been hurt badly, Madsen's going to gas out from all the takedown attempts, all the offensive wrestling, and Clay Guida is still going to have a ton left in the tank. And that third round could be an all-timer. Man, this is one of my favorite fights on the card. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just agree with what you're saying. Like, I think Madsen's going to pretty much clearly win those first two rounds, maybe get Guida out of there. But if not, that third round is going to be very, very sketchy. But we take a look at the line, and we do see that Mark Madsen is a favorite, opening up actually minus 250, and he's currently minus 158. And Clay Guida opened up plus 210, currently plus 138. Yeah, I mean, Clay Guida, 39 years old, towards the end of his career, just got a win over Michael Johnson. But then again, that's Michael Johnson. He's notorious for dropping the ball. I like Madsen here. I like him to win. It's just, do I want to lay minus 160 on a guy that we literally know, like if he doesn't get a finish, he's going to gas. We know that. So, do you want to get that invested in somebody that is going to gas? But no, I'm with you. I think he wins those first two rounds. I think the third round is going to be very sketchy. But what I liked seeing in that Austin Hubbard fight was, even in the third round, he was still able to get 2 takedowns in that third round. He was still able to get those takedowns. I wasn't able to do much with them, but still was able to carry that into the third round there. But man, he was so tired. He was gassed out bad. Somebody mentioned in the chat as well that Clay Guida is not really much of a finisher. So even if it does get into the third round, even if Madsen is very, very tired, gassed out, I think at the very least he can survive that third. So I'll say he does win like a 29-28 decision. But the gas thing really is kind of scaring me away from putting any money on this fight, Weezy.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, man. That third round was great against Hubbard because it showed a couple of things. It showed not only that, Mark Madsen doesn't have a gas tank to wrestle for 15 minutes. Very, very few mixed martial artists do, okay? Even the best wrestler. Do you see how gassed out Gillespie was in his last performance after wrestling for 2 rounds? It's exhausting offensive wrestling. But what we did see out of Madsen was that trademark Danish toughness that we've talked about before, Brady. Haven't we talked about that?
Yes, we have.
And, Madsen was really getting the shit beaten out of him there by Hubbard. Hubbard was absolutely putting it on him, but there is absolutely no quitting this dude, just like I talked about with the Danes. And, yeah, man, very similar to Nicholas Dalby, Mark Madsen is really, really tough. He's got a ton of heart, and he's never going to quit. So it doesn't matter how tired he gets. He will still probably shoot for takedowns, still probably be able to keep Guida at bay, and maybe be able to kind of eke out a split decision or a close decision victory here. But that third round is going to be fire.
It's gonna be crazy. I can't wait for it. Yeah, I'm with you. This is one of my favorite fights on the card as well. I think from a DraftKings standpoint, we'll talk about this next Tuesday. Mark Madsen is somebody I'm going to have circled to definitely take a look at. This guy goes for takedowns and a ton of them. So we'll get to the next fight here. We have a fight that's a pretty interesting one as well. We have Luis Saldana going against Austin Lingo. Saldana is 30 years old, 5'11" with a 73-inch reach, going against Austin Lingo, who is 27 years old, 5'10", a 70-inch reach. Saldana is going to have a 3-inch reach advantage and a 1-inch height advantage. In terms of the last couple of fights, Saldana is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. A KO win, submission win, knockout win, and then a decision win, unanimous over Jordan Griffin. And yeah, I mean, I really thought that Jordan Griffin clearly won that fight. Like, I just don't really see how they could score it for Saldana. I mean, it was somewhat of a close fight, but man, I thought Griffin did get it done with the takedowns, with the control. He had a submission temp at the end of the first round as well. So yeah, I really thought that Jordan Griffin did beat him there, but regardless, he is on a 5-fight winning streak. And as far as Austin Lingo, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. A win over Aaron Wood by knockout, Cruz knockout win as well, Hatley knockout win, and the Nueces allow his UFC debut. He came in as like a minus 200 favorite, dropped the ball against Zalal there in a fight where Zalal took him down 6 times, which was weird because I thought Austin Lingo was actually going to be the one going for takedowns in that fight, but lost his Zalal there and then bounces back with a win that's against Jacob Kilburn, something not too high on. So yeah, weird fight here on Weezy. You have Saldana, who's probably going to have the striking advantage. You have Austin Lingo, who's probably going to want to get this down to the mat. What do you have for us here on this one?
I'm excited for this fight. Lingo is really exciting, and so is Saldana. So this should be a real banger, man. Let me get right into my notes here. Saldana, 1-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage. He's definitely going to be the bigger dude here. He's got 12 more pro fights than Austin Lingo, and he's got over 100 more minutes of cage time. So Saldana is going to be bigger. He's also the far more experienced mixed martial artist here, having more than twice as many fights as Austin Lingo and almost 3 times as much cage time. 6 more years as a pro as well. Saldana, a 93% finish rate as a pro, dude. 14 out of 15 wins finished inside the distance. And he's equal opportunity. He's got 5 subs and 9 knockouts. So the guy has a number of different ways to finish you. He's been very impressive. Fantastic striking ratios in only 2 fights, though, in the UFC. We're talking about he's landing 4.39 significant strikes a minute and only absorbing 1.79. He's more than doubling up his opponents in striking. And then not only that, showing a 64.34% striking defense in his 2 fights in the UFC. So almost 2/3 striking defense thus far. He's got 1 knockdown too and 113 significant strikes landed. So almost a 1% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed, averaging 0.58 knockdowns per 15 minutes. So Saldana's got some really nice striking thus far, and he's shown some great striking defense. Definitely very dangerous on the feet. Now, for Austin Lingo, he's 3 years younger here. He's 27 while Saldana's 30. And Lingo, he's a good finisher. He's finished 5 of his 8 wins inside the distance. But what's interesting about that is all five wins by finish were finished within the first 2.5 minutes. 4 of those 5 wins for Lingo that came inside the distance were finished in the first 35 seconds. So this dude is crazy dangerous right out of the chute. You really need to worry about surviving that first 90 seconds with Austin Lingo, because when he throws with really, really bad intentions. And if you get hit by anything that he throws that hard, you're not going to get up. He is a savage striker. And then not only that, he does have 3 takedown attempts in 2 fights. He's gotten 2 of them. And that's gotten 17.39% control time for. And Saldana has shown 42.86% takedown defense thus far and has yielded 25% control time to his opponents. So there actually could be a path to victory not only for Lingo to land that big shot early, but if he does go to his wrestling, Saldana has only defended 3 of 7 takedown attempts successfully. So he's got less than a 50% takedown defense thus far. He's getting taken down 2.33 times for 15 minutes, and he's having 1.17 submission attempts against per 15 minutes. So not only are his opponents taking him down, but they're actually being pretty active trying to get submissions against him too. Jordan Griffin was close.
Yeah.
And if we look at the ratios, these guys haven't fought the best competition thus far. Lingo fighting Kilburn and Zalal, and then, it's largely some guys that nobody's really heard of prior to that. And Saldana has actually had some decent wins. We've got wins over Jordan Griffin, a very close fight. I definitely scored it for Griffin. Vince Murdoch on the Contender Series, and then, some other names. But 15 wins in his career. Yeah, this is an interesting one, man. I think if Saldana can kind of survive the first 2.5 minutes and maybe stop a couple of takedowns, as the fight goes on, I think he'll be the more active striker, the more accurate striker, the better movement and stuff. But boy, just surviving that early storm from Austin Lingo is going to be very difficult. Lingo never been finished. Saldana has been finished in 50% of his pro losses. So in 7 combined losses, only 3 of them coming inside the distance. But Saldana's got a 93% finish rate. Wow. Austin Lingo's finished 5 of 8 pro wins. Both of these guys are pretty good finishers. So, potentially a violence bet if you get a decent number on it, could be something I'm looking at here. But I'm going to need to look at some tape. What do you got stylistically on these guys? Are you leaning one way or another?
Yeah, I got to get into the tape more on this one as well. First look, I'm kind of leaning on the Lingo side just because he can mix it in, mix it up with the takedown. Saldana has shown a pretty poor takedown defense, a pretty poor get-up game as well. So I kind of think if Austin Lingo does go to that game plan of getting takedowns early and often, you can have success there. Austin Lingo, I do like that he is training out of Fortis MMA as well. I think they can come in there with a good game plan for him. Fortis has been on fire lately, if you haven't noticed as well. So for me, I'm kind of leaning on the Lingo side. I think obviously you got to favor the striking of Saldana, but I think the takedowns of Lingo can win a minutes there. But it's a very close fight. I'm not high on Lingo. Honestly, not that high on Saldana as well. In that Lingo versus Kilburn fight, I took a shot on, I believe it was the under 2.5 rounds at like plus money. I might do the same thing here. Maybe we do get a plus money again. Like you said, both guys are a really good finisher. Saldana, a crazy finish rate. Lingo, a good finisher as well. So I might look at a potential finish here. And I think we'll get some good odds on it for sure because I did not get – yes, it did go to decision, the Kilburn fight, but, man, they had so many opportunities to finish. Like, you could have finished him like 5 times in that fight. So, yeah, for me, I might be looking at violence. I do want to see where the line's at on this one, though. I'm assuming Saldana is a favorite. We do have Saldana opening up minus 130, is currently minus 151, and Lingo is plus 110, currently plus 131. I get it. For me, I'm personally leaning on the Lingo side just because I think he can get those takedowns, but I see this being a very competitive fight, and I see there being a potential finish as well.
Agreed. Yeah, and Saif Sayoud better have a better game plan for Austin Lingo than he had for Ramiz Brahimaj against Max Griffin. I'll tell you that right now. Otherwise, bet the house on Saldana.
Exactly. All right, so we have 161 in here. If you all can hit the like button, I do think we have like 86 likes. If we can get 100 by the time we get out here, that'd be much, much appreciated. We are moving on to a fight that I'm very interested in. We have Vinc Pichel going against Austin Hubbard. We have Pichel, who is 38 years old, 5'10" with a 72-inch reach, going against Austin Hubbard, who is 29 years old, 5'10", 71-inch reach. So Pichel's going to be 9 years older. Both guys, both 5'10", and then Pichel's going to have a slight one-in reach advantage as well. As far as their last couple fights, Pichel is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He has a knockout win over Damian Brown, a decision win over Joaquim Silva, a submission loss to Gregor Gillespie, no shame in there, a decision win over Roosevelt Roberts, and a decision win over Jim Miller. As far as Austin Hubbard, 3-2 in his last 5 fights, a win over Kyle Prepelic by decision, a decision loss to Mark Madsen, a knockout win over Max Roskopf, a submission loss to Joe Selecki, and just recently a decision win over Dakota Bush. Yeah, I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on this one, Uncle Weezy, because I am looking at potentially betting a side here. So I'm curious to see if we do line up on this one.
Yeah, this is a very interesting fight. You know, with Pichel has been very active with his grappling in the UFC. And, you know, in Hubbard, I think he prefers to kind of keep it standing. He's really got really good hands, fantastic conditioning that was on full display in the Mark Madsen fight, really in all his fights. He's just so dangerous in the 3rd round. But, you know, we got a 38-year-old lightweight here in Vinc Pichel. And that is a very, very old lightweight. And the interesting thing about Pichel is even though he's 38 years old and he's been a pro for almost 12 years, he's only got 15 fights. So he's not been active. So with a lot of 38-year-olds, you short them because you think that there's a lot of tread on the tires. You know, maybe the body's not holding up as well. But then again, Pichel's really only got 127 minutes of pro cage time. I mean, he's 9 years older than Austin Hubbard, yet Austin Hubbard has spent about twice as much time in the professional cage as Vinc Pichel. And Hubbard's just been way more active, Brady. I mean, we're talking about 18 fights in 6 years. So he's averaging 3 fights per year is Hubbard, while we've got 15 fights in 12 years for Pichel. 1.25 fights per year for Pichel, 3 for Hubbard. So just way more active, way younger, in different career trajectories at this point. Let me go to my notes here. So the advantages for Vinc Pichel in this case, in my opinion, are that he's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. He's got 5 more years as a pro, 2 more UFC fights, so he's definitely fought a higher percentage of his career at the highest level. 8 of his 13 pro wins are inside the distance and by KO. He lands almost 1 more significant strike per minute than he absorbs. He's got a 57% career striking defense, which is solid, and he's never been knocked down. So definitely very tough as well. And he's had 8 UFC fights, so never being knocked down, it shows that Vinc Pichel is very tough. And he's out controlling his opponents 36.55% to 20%. And he's fought, beaten, and lost to the far better and far more experienced competition than Austin Hubbard has. Now, Hubbard is 9 years younger, so that's he's got that youth advantage. And then not only is he younger, he's got 3 more professional fights than Vinc Pichel. He's got over 100 more minutes of cage time, and in just half the time as a pro. So Hubbard has been the way busier and more active fighter. He's younger, busier, more active, more experienced. He's got excellent conditioning, like we talked about, team elevation, training up there in the elevation. This guy doesn't get tired, and he is savage in the 3rd round. Lands over 1 more strike per minute than his opponents do, because even though Hubbard is only a 500 record in the UFC, he's landing 3.66 significant strikes a minute, but only absorbing 2.61. And then he's got a 59% striking defense, so also very good defensively. And he's been an efficient wrestler thus far. He's gotten 4 of 6 of his takedown attempts, so he's only attempting 1 takedown attempt per fight, but he's landing them with a 2/3 accuracy. So he's very efficient. And those 4 takedowns have resulted in almost 18% control time. And here's the thing. Vinc Pichel, his takedown defense in the UFC has been 20%. Vinc Pichel has been taken down 16 times on only 20 takedown attempts against. He has only successfully defended 4 of 20 takedown attempts. So he's getting taken down 2.67 times per 15 minutes. He's had 1 submission attempt per 15 minutes against. But Vinc Pichel is out controlling his opponents at about a 2-to-1 ratio. So he's gotten 23 takedown attempts, but only yielded 16. But he's still averaging more control time, almost twice as much as his opponents. While for Hubbard, his takedown defense is only 58.82%. So for somebody in Pichel who's averaging about 4.5 takedown attempts per fight and getting them at a crazy clip, 60% takedown accuracy, I could see either one of these guys having success if they choose to go to the wrestling first. Hubbard, 2/3 takedown accuracy. Vinc Pichel, only 20% takedown defense. And then you see Pichel, who's getting takedowns at over a 60% clip, and Austin Hubbard's takedown defense is less than 60%. Now, let's keep in mind, he's fought Davey Ramos. He's fought an Olympic wrestler in Marco Madsen. He's even fought Max Roskopf, who's a damn good grappler and a damn good wrestler in his own right. And shout out Max Roskopf coming back, getting a win on the regional scene, I think last weekend or 2 weekends ago. Good to see him back. I hope he has some success in his future, because it was rough what happened to him in the UFC, but I'd like to see him back at some point. Yeah, man, this is a very interesting stylistic matchup. I could see whoever goes to the grappling first having success here. I think if it stays standing, we've seen Pichel get 1 knockdown and 288 significant strikes landed, and Hubbard has never been knocked down. This is a close fight, man. I'm not really leaning either way, and I know that you just said that you've got to lean one way or another here. I'd love to hear what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I like Vinc Pichel in this fight. The only thing that really scares me is going to be that age. You mentioned a 30-year-old or 38-year-old lightweight. That's not a good look. But he went out there against Jim Miller, and he looked really, really good. I mean, it's weird with Austin Hubbard, though. I mean, you take a look at who the UFC is matching up against. It's all pretty much grapplers. I mean, he matched him against Davi Ramos. Ramos was able to take him down 3 times. Matched him against Mark Madsen. Madsen took him down 8 times. Matched him up against Max Roskopf. Took him down 2 times. Joe Selecki. They're matching up against all grapplers, and then now we have a grappler here in Vinc Pichel. So, I think Vinc Pichel can get takedowns here. You mentioned the 20% takedown defense. I think that's more so because he really doesn't care if he gets taken down. Like he's a legit grappler. I do think he's going to have the grappling advantage in here as well. Again, the only thing that does kind of scare me away is going to be the age. But if I think he can get on top of Hubbard, I think he can take him down, get some control time as well. I think he's a better grappler of the two, and I think that's where the fight's going to play out a lot. It's just the age. I just don't really like the 38-year-old age up there. But yeah, I do like Pichel here. But with that said, like Hubbard, he's training at a good camp, Elevation Fight Team. With him getting matched up against all these grapplers, you got to assume that he is improving that takedown defense. He is improving that ground game. And I'm sure he is, but I just think, if Vinc Pichel's not like completely shot, which I don't think he is, honestly, I think it's a very winnable matchup for him. But then again, it could be a close fight. It could be a very close fight, but I just think that Vinc Pichel is going to get the better of the grappling exchanges. I do see this fight probably going to decision. We do see Vinc Pichel opening up as a minus 160 favorite. He's currently minus 135. And Austin Hubbard opening up as a plus 140 dog, currently plus 115. So early money coming in on Austin Hubbard. For me, I'm looking at Vinc Pichel minus 135. I don't love it, but it's something I'm going to keep my eye on throughout the week. Got to do a little bit more tape on it, but I am leaning Vinc Pichel as far as like an early look.
Yeah, and here's an interesting stat. If we look at the strength of schedule for Austin Hubbard, right? He's got 3 UFC wins over Dakota Bush, Max Roskopf, and Kyle Prepolek. The combined UFC records of those 3 gentlemen are 0 wins and 4 losses. So Austin Hubbard doesn't have a UFC win yet over a guy who has won a UFC fight. However, if you look at his losses, against an undefeated 4-0 Joe Solecki, against an undefeated 2-0 Mark Madsen, and against a 4-3 Davey Ramos. And Davey Ramos has lost to some of the best lightweights. Those 3 losses that Ramos has are legit losses. So you kind of have this in-between area here where it's like, we know that Hubbard can beat the guys who don't have a UFC win, and we know he can compete and hang with guys that are really top-notch guys in Solecki, Madsen, and Ramos, and he's only been finished in one of those 3 losses. What happens when we get matched up against somebody who's a little more middle of the road here? But I would put Pichel more in that category of Solecki, Madsen, and Ramos than I would put him in the category of Dakota Bush, Max Roskopf, and Kyle Prepolek. So, yeah, I'm kind of leaning Pichel here, but God, he's a 38-year-old lightweight, so that makes me pump the brakes just a little bit here. But I think Pichel's going to have the wrestling advantage and the grappling advantage, and he's fought the tougher level of competition over his career if you look at the aggregate.
Yeah, that level of competition like really, really jumps right out at you. He also mentioned the wins of the combined record is 0 wins. That's didn't even notice that. So thanks for pointing that out. That is something to know for sure. So we will move on to the next fight. And we have a interesting fight. Shea Sherman going against Parker Porter. A heavyweight fight here. We have Sherman, who is 31 years old, 6'4", with a 78 reach, going against Parker Porter, who is 36 years old, 6 foot, with a 75-inch reach. As far as the last couple fights, Shea Sherman, he is 1-4 in his last 5 fights. Knockout loss to Shamil Abdurakhimov, a decision loss to Justin Willis, a knockout loss to Augusto Sakai, a knockout win over Ike Villanueva, and a decision loss to Andre Arlovsky. So the one thing I did want to point out here with that is, yes, he's 1-4 in his last 5 fights, but I believe he tested positive for PEDs after that Ike Villanueva fight. So, yeah, I mean, that very well, I don't know why it didn't turn into a no contest. That's kind of weird, but yeah, I did hear he popped for PEDs after that fight. So as far as Parker Porter, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, DQ loss, a submission win, a knockout win, a knockout loss in his UFC debut against Chris Daukaus. What's crazy about that is I believe Chris Daukaus was a dog in that fight, Uncle Weezy. I remember playing Daukaus. I think it was like 7,800 on DK. That was crazy, especially looking at it now. Seeing Daukaus as a dog was insane there. And then had a 3-round war with Josh Parisian. So interesting fight here. You probably do got to expect some violence. Which way you lean on this one, Weezy? And let's talk about some stats here.
Yeah, very interesting there. And people should keep that in mind. That's an excellent point that you brought up, that Parker Porter, after Daukaus already had 1 UFC fight and Porter was making his debut, was a favorite over Daukaus. And we saw that Daukaus had fought some legitimate competition on the regional scene before he got to the UFC. And he already had a win by knockout when he fought Porter. So, yeah, this was interesting. People think highly of Parker Porter, and we saw it in that second fight against Parisian. He looked fantastic. For right now, if we're looking at the measurables, we're going to see that Shea Sherman's got some nice advantages here in the measurables, as he's 4 inches taller, has a 3-inch reach advantage, and he's 5 years younger than Parker Porter. So all those are significant. Shea Sherman also has an experience advantage here, having 6 more pro fights than Parker Porter, having about 20 more minutes of cage time. but Parker Porter has been a pro for almost 14 years. So he's been fighting since about the age of 22. While for Chase Sherman, it's about 7.5 years. So about 20, both of these guys started fighting around the same age. It's just Porter's 5 years older. We've got Chase Sherman with not only the measurables advantage, not only the experience advantage, but the UFC experience advantage as well. 9 UFC fights for Sherman, only 2 for Porter. But Sherman's 3-6 in the UFC, while Porter's 1-1. If we look at the finish stats here, we see that both of these guys are pretty damn good finishers. 93% knockout rate for Chase Sherman in his 15 professional wins. That means 14 out of 15 pro wins for Chase Sherman coming by way of knockout. While for Parker Porter in his 11 wins, he's got, so Parker Porter either has 10 wins or 11 wins. If you look on SureDog, I think it's 10. And if you look on Tapology, I think it's 11. Let's just say it's only 10 for ease in the percentages. But 3 wins coming by way of submission, 5 wins coming by way of knockout, and then either 2 or 3 coming by way of decision, depending on who you believe. While Parker Porter has been finished in 5 out of his 6 losses, and Chase Sherman has been finished in 4 out of his 7 losses. Add up those losses, 13 total losses, and we've got 4 plus 5 being 9. So 9 out of these guys' 13 career losses coming inside the distance. So anything that's fight doesn't go to decision that's a little bit better than minus 190, minus 185 would be a pretty good edge over the books. If we look at the striking numbers, we see that Sherman lands more than he absorbs. He lands 6, absorbs only 5.77, while Porter actually lands 7.35 and absorbs 7.76. So I think that's because we got a little bit smaller sample size here with Porter, and that Dawkins fight was just a whirlwind, and he probably got landed on a ton there. We don't see particularly great striking defense out of either of these guys. Both of these guys have been knocked down. Obviously, Porter has been knocked down 2 times in 151 significant strikes against, both of them by Dawkins. Chase Sherman's been knocked down 3 times in 563 significant strike attempts. So both of these guys are getting knocked down a decent amount. And it's not surprising at the heavyweight division where we see as much power as we traditionally do. If we look at the grappling stats, Chase Sherman has never attempted a takedown in 9 fights. So we can pretty safely call this a striker versus grappler. I mean, Parker Porter had some really nice success with the grappling in the Parisian fight. Got 2 out of 4 takedown attempts for 50%. He's averaging 1.54 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he's gotten 23% control time in his 19 minutes in the UFC, while only yielding 5.39% control time. For Chase Sherman, about 90% of his fights are taking place in the center of the cage at striking range. So that's obviously where he's the most comfortable. We know that because of that percentage. We know that also because Chase Sherman's never even attempted a takedown. So, of course, he doesn't want to grapple here. So we'll probably be looking for Parker Porter to try to get this fight to the ground. Chase Sherman's takedown defense is 77.78%. He's successfully defended 7 of 9 takedown attempts against and has only yielded 5% control time. So he's been controlled probably less than 5 minutes on these 2 takedowns and 9 takedown attempts. So he is able to keep the fight standing where he wants it. However, when you look at his opponents, really only Justin Willis is somebody that looks to grapple a whole ton. Shamil Abdurrahimov does look to grapple sometimes, but frankly, he's the better boxer than Chase Sherman, so he didn't need to. I think you're going to want to see Sherman keeping this standing. You're going to want to see Parker Porter getting this to the ground. I think Parker Porter is going to have some success if he gets it there, but this is kind of a low-level fight. I'm thinking that Parker Porter is going to continue to look better here, but he's older. I just don't know. This is a tough one, dude. Which way are you leaning on this one?
Dude, this is a very tough one because you can't really trust either fighter, especially Chase Sherman, who is 1-4 in his last 5 fights. But you mentioned the tail of the tape. He's going to be, 5 years younger. He's going to have a 4-inch height advantage. He's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. He's fought the much, much better competition. He's been in the UFC much longer as well. And what I like about Shea Sherman is, and don't get me wrong, there's not a lot of things I like about Shea Sherman. What I do like about him is his toughness. This guy has extreme toughness. He has a solid chin. He has been knocked out before, but, guys that hit very, very hard. And I like his heart as well. He has a lot of heart. He slows down as the fight goes on and gasses out, but he pushes through it, and he's looking for that finish every single second of that fight, no matter how tired he gets. I really like seeing that out of him, whereas, Parker Porter, I kind of question his toughness. I kind of question his durability. He's been finished several times. I'm going to pick Chase Sherman, but I'm not going to be betting this fight, at least from a side. I think it's a decent opportunity from a violence perspective. You take a look at their finish rates, and Chase Sherman has a 93% finish rate, all by knockout, 4 knockout losses. And then Parker Porter has never lost by decision in 16 fights, 3 coming by knockout, and then 2 coming by submission as well. So if Chase Sherman does win, there's a very good chance that it is inside the distance. And kind of the same thing for Parker Porter. It probably is inside the distance as well. So, yeah, I'm with him. We're looking for the fight doesn't go to decision line, maybe a potential under. I don't know if I'd touch the under 2 or under 1.5. If they do for some reason set it at 2.5, I'll take it. But I'm not. I feel like this could possibly be like a really sloppy heavyweight fight that does go, later than we think. So, probably no bet here for me, especially seeing that Chase Sherman is a decent-sized favorite, opening at -155, currently -162, and then Parker Porter is +142, open at +135. So, yeah, the pick for me is Sherman. I'm not betting it, but like I said, the tail of the tape is telling. The level of competition is telling, and like I said, I don't like a lot of things from Sherman's game, but that toughness is next level, and he has a lot of heart. So I do think those two things go a long way at heavyweight, and I will pick him to win, probably by knockout.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one, man. This is an interesting fight, and Porter's 36. He's got to go now if he wants to make a run. And he looked really good in the Parisian fight, and there's no shame in losing to a stud like Dawkins. So he needs this fight. I mean, these guys so far are a combined 4-7 in the UFC, and they've got 13 combined losses between them. So whoever wants to take this next step needs this one bad.
Yep, for sure. So we shall move on up the card. We have William Knight going against Fabio Cherant. William Knight, 33 years old, 5'10", with a 73-inch reach. Fabio Cherant, he is 26 years old, 6'1", with a 74-inch reach. William Knight is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He did make his UFC debut against Alexa Kamor, got a decision win there, and then lost a decision to Da Un Jung. Prior to that, had a knockout win over Cody Brundage, a knockout win before that, and then a knockout loss to Tafon Nchukwu, who is also in the UFC. As far as Fabio Cherant, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He fought Alexa Kamor on the Contender Series. In that fight, I'll pull up the numbers in a little bit, but he got outlanded bad against Alexa Kamor. I think it was like something crazy, like 50 to 6 or something like that in terms of significant strikes. And then Alexa Kamor gets him with a knee, I believe, in that second round and knocks him out there. So that was a really bad look. But after that, he goes out, gets a submission win, gets 2 decision wins after that, and then comes in, makes his UFC debut against Alonzo Menifield and gets submitted by Alonzo Menifield. So, yeah, interesting fight here, Weezy. Fabio Cherant, I'm not all that impressed with the guy. Same thing with William Knight. I do think William Knight's a little bit overhyped. A lot of hype on this guy after he did, beat Alexa Kamor, and he was one of the more popular plays against Da Un Jung. Yeah, weird fight. Where are you leaning here, Uncle Weezy, and what do you got for the stats on this one?
Yeah, I don't know which way I'm leaning on this one. This is one of the fights that I don't have notes on yet. So let's just go through these numbers. If we look at the tail of the tape, we're seeing Cherant's got some nice little advantages. 7 years younger, 3 inches taller, 1 inch of reach, and he's a southpaw versus William Knight being an orthodox fighter. William Knight, a little more experienced, 2 more fights, about 25 more minutes of cage, 35 more minutes of cage time. Both of these guys mixed martial arts career between 3 and 4 years. Knight 4 fights at the UFC level, 2 for Cherant. If we look at the finish numbers, both of these guys great finishers. We got the 89% finish rate of William Knight, finishing 8 of 9 pro wins, all by knockout. And then we've got Fabio Cherant finishing 5 of his 7 wins, all by submission. So we could probably call this a striker versus grappler matchup. However, we've seen that William Knight really does love to go to the wrestling. So I think both of these guys are going to be looking to wrestle because, frankly, there's not much to like about the striking from either of these guys. You know, it's kind of ugly. It's about as ugly as the outfit that William Knight is wearing in his Tapology picture. Have you guys seen that picture? That is the worst Tapology picture that there is. I'm surprised he wasn't arrested and booked for attempted leather wearing that outfit, because that was the worst thing. That's the worst picture that there is. So I don't know, man. Both of these guys, good finishers. For Cherant does it by sub, Knight does it by knockout, but both of these guys want to go to their grappling. And let's also note that 3 out of these guys' 4 combined losses have come inside the distance. So this could be a nice little violent spot here. The striking numbers, like I say, not looking great. But William Knight is landing 1 more significant strike per minute than he absorbs. He lands 3.56 and he absorbs 2.56. And he's been very efficient, even though he doesn't throw a lot of volume, only 4.79 significant strikes per minute. He's landing at a 74% accuracy. So that's fantastic. And that's because he gets the fights to the ground, shoots a lot of takedowns, and tries to accrue control time. When you do that, your striking percentages definitely go way up in percentage. Fabio Cherant showing piss poor striking numbers. He couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. Only landing 1 significant strike per minute out of 3.29 offered, 30% striking accuracy. And he lands 1 significant strike per minute and absorbs 6.73. That is a horrible ratio. That is god awful. And to boot, both of these guys block punches with their face, showing some of the worst combined striking defense that there is. If you added up both of these guys' striking defense, I don't think it would be as good as Bea Maleki's. So we've got a 34% striking defense for William Knight, and not to be outdone with the ass percentages, Fabio Cherant goes down to 31.88. And Cherant has been knocked down on over 2% of the significant strikes landed against him, 2.15 knockdowns allowed per 15 minutes. So yeah, this is looking good for a violence bet. Now, William Knight has been a very active wrestler in the UFC, as he's averaging about 4 takedown attempts per fight, and he's getting about 2 takedowns per fight, as he's gotten 8 of 15 takedown attempts for a 53.33% takedown accuracy, averaging 2.56 takedowns per 15 minutes and 14% control time. Cherant, in 2 fights and 7 minutes of cage time, hasn't even shot a takedown yet, which is very strange because he's gotten 5 of his 7 professional wins are by submission. He's shown 0% takedown defense, as he's been taken down on the only attempt against him. I believe that was Menafield who took him down and then subbed him. So, you know, Cherant getting out-controlled, William Knight getting out-controlled too, and we saw him get taken down over and over and over again by Da Un Jung. Da Un Jung using some judo takedowns, kind of like an Osotogari outside trip that he used very successfully over and over again against William Knight. So William Knight, even though he's an active wrestler, he's only showing 40% takedown defense. He's getting taken down 3.83 times for 15 minutes, and he's yielded 42% control time. Man, he's getting out-controlled 3-to-1 ratio right now by his opponents in a 4-fight sample size. So there's not a whole lot to like about either of these guys, dude. If we look at the strength of schedule, we're just not seeing much there. There's not a lot of meat on the bone. Cherant has lost to Menafield and Kamer. Those are both good losses. But then we look at the wins. Eric Murray Jr., UG, Myron Dennis. You know, Myron Dennis probably the best of the 3, but even that wasn't a great fight. You know, and then, you know, William Knight does have a win over Alexa Kamer, while Cherant lost to him. So there's a little bit of MMA math on the side of Knight. But really, dude, there's not a lot of meat on this bone. I don't know, dude. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, these are typically 2 guys that I'm going to be looking to fade here. And you brought it up. 0 takedown attempts for Cherant is very weird to me. And that Alexa Kamer fight, it did go into the 2nd round. And yeah, he shot 0 takedowns, which does not make sense. Whereas, you know, Kamer outlanded him 47-7. and he did not think of going for one takedown the whole time, which is just weird to me. So, yeah, for me, I do like William Knight. I think he's the better striker. I think Fabio Cherant is not the best fighter in the world. I honestly don't think he's UFC caliber. William Knight, I'm not high on him, but I do think it's a very winnable fight for him as well. You mentioned the poor striking defense of both guys. My goodness, some of the worst you ever see. It's just a really weird fight, and even weirder when you look at the line, because William Knight opened up minus 325. Minus 325. He is now minus 230. So William Knight looks to be, if I'm not mistaken, William Knight looks to be the biggest favorite on the card. William Knight is the biggest favorite on the card.
Save us. God save us if he's the biggest favorite on this card. Dude, we've talked about this before. You don't lay that kind of juice just because you're up against an ass opponent. You have to lay that juice on fighters that actually look good. And if you get taken down 8 times by the same judo trip, Osotogari, if anybody's ever studied judo, is the very first trip you learn on the very first day of class. It is the most basic judo throw that there is. And Da Un Jung, a name that you might expect might use some judo, you know, yeah, he went in there and just tripped him over and over and over again. You know, that this guy opened up minus 330, that made me laugh. That made me laugh out loud. No fucking way I would bet William Knight against anybody at minus 250, minus 300. I mean, he'd have to be fighting like a really bad lightweight. I just, no way, man. No way. Don't do it. 1-800-GAMBLER. Don't let your Uncle Weezy catch you laying that kind of juice on Knight. There's no value there.
Yeah, even worse, like there's 2 favorites on this card that are minus 200 and greater, and those 2 favorites are William Knight and Courtney Casey. So I definitely caution anybody from doing any parlays this week or next week or in 2 weeks. Yeah. Because man, William Knight minus 230, like that's still probably a little bit too wide. I think the line's going to keep on closing. Yeah, for me it's Knight, but even if Knight was like minus 150, I'm not going to bet. I'm not betting on him. 2 guys that I typically want to bet against. So going against each other there, yeah. 1-800-GAMBLER is up for a reason. I would definitely caution anybody on laying the juice there on William Knight, but I do think he gets it done. So we shall move on to a very intriguing fight here. Brian Kelleher going against Domingo Pilarte. We have Kelleher, who is 34 years old, 5'6" with a 66-inch reach. Domingo Pilarte, 31 years old, 6 foot, 73-inch reach. So what sticks out big time is going to be, well, for one, Pilarte is going to be 3 years younger. 2, he's going to have a huge, like a 6-inch height advantage, and then a huge 7-inch reach advantage as well. So yeah, he's going to be the much bigger fighter in this fight. In terms of their last couple fights, we have Brian Kelleher, who is 3-2, had a submission win over Ode Osborne, a knockout win over Hunter Azure, a decision loss to Cody Stamann, no shame in that, a submission win over Ray Rodriguez, and a decision loss over Ricky Simone, no shame in that. Whereas we have Domingo Pilarte, who has a split decision win over Adrian Yanez, a submission win over Vince Morales, and then a split decision loss over Felipe Colores, and then a no contest against Journey Newsom in a fight where I believe Journey Newsom starched him in like the first 30 seconds. So, and then Journey Newsom, I believe, probably popped for marijuana or something stupid like that. So, yeah, interesting fight here. Even the more experienced guy in Brian Kelleher going against the guy in Domingo Pilarte who dropped the ball. I'll always hate this guy, Uncle Weezy. I remember I was on vacation. I was on a cruise. He was fighting Felipe Colores. Pilarte was like 9,400 on DraftKings. He was my favorite play on the entire card. I expected him to go out there and shave some ass, and he lost to Felipe Colores. Who is obviously not great. So I'll always remember him for that. I'll always not like him for that. But yeah, in terms of this fight, yeah, interesting fight. For me, I'll kind of give it away right away. I am leaning on the Kelleher side. I have not checked the line yet, but I think it's a good fight for him. Kelleher is very dangerous anywhere the fight goes. We've seen Pilarte knocked out. And Kelleher is very dangerous on the mat if Pilarte does want to indeed take it there. So I think I'm going to go with a more experienced guy in Kelleher. Don't know if I'm going to bet. We'll take a look at the line in a little bit, but which way are you leaning, Weezy?
I don't know. This is a hard one. I'm kind of with you on Pilarte here. You know, that loss to Colores was bad. You know, he was a big favorite. He really dropped the ball there. And then he gets head kicked in the first round a loss there to Journey Newsome, and then that gets overturned to a no contest because Journey pops for weed, which is ridiculous. I mean, why isn't that overturned back to a win for Journey Newsome at this point? We've covered that marijuana is not a performance enhancer at all. If it was, I'd probably be the world's richest man. If marijuana were a performance enhancer, I'd be on a yacht right now, banging 3 Swedish models on top of a pile of cash. But guess what? It's not, and that is a bad loss. So we've got a guy right now who's coming off two really bad losses and a little bit of a layoff, and he's fighting Brian Kelleher, a guy with really nice hands, a guy with a ridiculous guillotine, and a guy who's fought much better level of competition than Pilardi has. So let's go through the numbers here. Like you mentioned, Pilardi going to be much bigger here, 6 inches taller, 7-inch reach advantage, and he's a southpaw. But Kelleher, obviously, way more experienced here. We got 34 professional fights for Kelleher, 11 for Pilardi. We got 22 wins and 12 losses for Kelleher, 8-2 with a no contest. Let's just call it 8-3 for Pilardi. About 200 more minutes of cage time. And what's interesting here, this is kind of weird. Pilardi has a 12-year career, but only has 11 fights. I mean, so he's not active at all. We're talking about 1 fight a year for Pilardi, while in a 10-year career for Kelleher, he's got 34 fights. So obviously, Kelleher, huge experience advantage here and a huge, busyness advantage. He's just been fighting better competition, and he's fighting 3.4 times a year, while Pilardi, it's less than 1 time a year. 8 more UFC fights for Kelleher, about 70 more minutes of cage time. And then we see Kelleher's finish rates, 81% as a pro. I mean, so I would say 18 of his 22 wins, if my math is correct, have come inside the distance. That's fantastic. And he's equal opportunity, getting 45% by sub and 36% by knockout. And Pilardi, no slouch in his own right, getting 4 wins by submission, 2 wins by knockout, 6 wins of his 8 have come inside the distance. Pilardi never been finished. Well, no, he has. He got finished by Journey Newsome. And we got a 58% finish rate for Kelleher. So I would say maybe 7 of his 12 losses have come inside the distance, 6 by submission, 1 by knockout. So, yeah, we got the striking numbers here. Both of these guys absorbing way more strikes than they land at 4 for Kelleher, but he's absorbing about 5.5. Pilardi only lands about 2 and absorbs 3.69. Pilardi with a poor striking defense at 43%, and he's getting knocked down on almost 2.5% of the significant strikes landed against him. So we could see a path to victory there for Kelleher via the boxing. We saw how good that boxing looked in his win against Hunter Azure. I mean, Kelleher does have power in his hands for sure, but Pilardi is going to be the much taller, much rangier fighter, also younger. But, we're talking about how experienced and busy Kelleher has been. 25% takedown percentage, 15% control time for, 18% control time against for Kelleher. Pilardi's been pretty good with his wrestling, as he's getting 3 of 7 takedown attempts for 42.86%, averaging 2 takedowns per 15 minutes and 1.33 submission attempts, getting 27.41% control time and yielding 30% control time. So it looks like Pilardi's fights are taking place in control time positions about 57-58% of the time, while for Kelleher, it's about 33% of the time. So Pilardi seems to be a little bit more comfortable having his fights take place in the grappling exchanges, while Kelleher will go there, but he does seem to trust his hands a little bit more than Domingo does. Very interesting fight. I like Kelleher, though, for a lot of reasons. First of all, he's never been knocked out by a stoner that I know of. Number 2, 3 times as experienced. 3, I think he's a little more well-rounded. His defensive, when people shoot takedowns on him, they have to watch out for that guillotine, and it kind of puts some people in a situation where they might be a little bit nervous about initiating the grappling with somebody who has a guillotine like Kelleher does. So that it puts somebody like Pilardi in a situation where he may not feel comfortable shooting on Kelleher. We'll have to see how that goes. Kelleher's takedown defense is not spectacular, though, at 59%. So, yeah, it's a very interesting stylistic matchup, man. What's the line on this thing? Kelleher should be probably a pretty big favorite, but Pilardi's got some advantages in the measurables here.
Yeah, I was looking at it, and it's kind of weird that Brian Kelleher is a favorite here. And I kind of look back at past fights. I think this is like the third time in his entire UFC career where he is a favorite. So typically we do see Kelleher at an underdog price. Excuse me. So I thought that was pretty interesting here. But we did see him open up at -140, and he is now -170. Domingo Pilarte opened up +120, and he is currently +145. Yeah, I like Kelleher for the same reasons you do. The experience, he's dangerous everywhere, striking, grappling as well. Pilarte, a decent grappler himself, has finished half his wins by submission. I will say that Kelleher has been subbed a massive 6 times, so maybe that could be a path to victory. But yeah, I like Kelleher. I don't know if I'll get there from a betting perspective. I think the under could be interesting. Brian Kelleher, an 82% finish rate, like you mentioned. Pilarte, a 75% finish rate. Pilarte never officially finished, although we did see him get knocked out by a noose in there. And Kelleher has been finished 7 times out of 12 losses. So I think the under could be potentially interesting there. But for me, I do like Kelleher as far as a pick. Not in love with the line, but I will pick him to win.
Yeah, it's I'm picking him to win too, but I really need to look a little bit closer here because there are some things to like about Pilardi here. He's younger, he's much bigger, but yeah, this is an interesting stylistic matchup, man. I'm looking forward to this fight, but I can't say that I got a really strong feeling one way or another. But you know what? The fight doesn't go to decision. Does look pretty good.
Yep, for sure. I wish we could see those lines. I always like talking about those lines with you, but I'm assuming they're going to get them out pretty soon here, maybe in the next couple of days, hopefully, or maybe they'll take a break. Maybe they'll take a couple of days off because we don't have fights for a while. But yeah, I'm going to be refreshing my bookie nonstop. Weezy looking for those props there. Okay, so we shall move on to, in my opinion, I think this is the best fight on the card. I am really looking forward to this fight. This fight's phenomenal. Alexandre Pantoja going against Brandon Royval. Pantoja, who is 31 years old, 5'5" with a 67-inch reach. Brandon Royval, who is 28 years old, 5'9", 68-inch reach. As far as the last couple of fights, we do have Pantoja, who is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. A knockout win over Wilson Reyes, a decision loss to Davison Figueiredo, a knockout win over Matt Schnell, a decision loss to Askar Askarov, and a decision win over Manel Kopp, who we just saw get a nice flying knee win last night. So what I want to point out is he's losing to some really good competition. Davison Figueiredo, obviously, great competition there, and Askar Askarov, who's very good in his own right. And then Brandon Royval, same thing, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, submission win, made his UFC debut against Tim Elliott. Elliott had a lot of success early in that fight, and then we did see Elliott gas out. Ultimately, Royval was able to get a submission, and then against Kai Kara-France in a very, very exciting fight that lasted about a round and a half. Royval hurt Kai Kara-France like a couple times in that fight, ended up submitting him. Very fun fight that was. And then a loss to Brandon Moreno. I believe there was some type of injury for Royval. I think it was maybe like a shoulder injury in that fight. But regardless, a loss to Brandon Moreno, the champ, really no shame in that. So I think this is a very high-level fight, Uncle Weezy, a very exciting fight. Both these guys are exciting fighters. Both these guys like to go to war. And I'm expecting a very, very fun fight, and on paper, it looks like a very competitive matchup as well. What are you thinking?
I can't wait for this one, man. We got Royval with some really nice advantages here in the measurables. He's 3 years younger. He's 4 inches taller. He's got a inch reach advantage, and he's a southpaw. We got Pantoja being the more experienced mixed martial artist here. He's got 11 more pro fights than Royval. He's got more than twice as much cage time as Royval, and about 5 more years in the game, we'll call it. 10 UFC fights for Pantoja, 3 for Royval. So, about 1/6 of Royval's pro career has taken place at the highest level, while for Pantoja, it's more than a third. We've got about 100 more cage time minutes for Pantoja in the UFC. A 70% overall finish rate for Pantoja, while for Royval, it's 92%. So, Royval is finishing 11 of his 12 wins inside the distance, but has only been finished in 1 of his 5 pro losses. And let's face it, that was because he got injured. He never quit, but he was absolutely injured underneath Brandon Moreno there when he got finished. So, and Alexandre Pantoja has never been finished. And this dude's been fighting at the highest level of the UFC's flyweight division for 10 fights. No losses inside the distance for Pantoja, only one for Royval. 1 of 10 combined losses comes inside the distance, and it was due to an injury. So we might like the fight goes to decision prop here. It looks like it might have some meat on the bone there. If we look at the striking stats, Pantoja, very good. 4.3 significant strikes per minute, only absorbing 3.4 for a significant strike differential of almost 1. 48% striking accuracy, showing good power for a flyweight is Pantoja at 0.62% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed. So I think that's 2 knockdowns and 482 significant strikes. No, that's 3 knockdowns. I'm sorry. And 0.4 knockdowns per 15 minutes. Now, Royval looking also very good in the striking. 3.77 landed, only 2.88 absorbed. So about a 0.9 significant strike differential as well. It's just that Pantoja's defense is at about 54%, while for Royval, it's 47. In the limited sample size that we have for Royval, we do have 2 knockdowns for Royval and only 72 significant strikes landed. So he is landing a knockdown on almost 3% of the significant strikes that he's landed in a very small sample size. So 1.57 knockdowns per 15 minutes. He has been knocked down as well, as he's been knocked down 1 time in 55 strikes for a 1.82% significant strikes per, knockdowns per total significant strikes absorbed. And he is allowing 0.79 knockdowns per 15 minutes. We see that Royval is being out-controlled by his opponents in the grappling. He's only attempted 1 takedown in 3 fights, while Pantoja has attempted 20 takedowns in 10 fights. So obviously, Pantoja, the more willing wrestler, he's getting his takedowns at a 35% clip, averages 0.94 takedowns per 15 minutes, 0.94 sub-attempts per 15 minutes, and about 23% control time. Royval not active as a wrestler, only averaging 0.79 takedowns per 15 minutes, but 2.36 submission attempts per 15 minutes. So he is very active with his submission attempts trying to finish fights. Brandon Royval's takedown defense has not been good, only 53.85%. I think that's probably because he loves grappling, and I don't think he cares if he's on the bottom or on the top. As long as he's on the ground, that's where he's most comfortable. So that's why you see in 13 takedown attempts against, but only 1 for, we still see about 64% of his fights taking place in control time positions. So, Pantoja is going to have to be comfortable there against Royval, because that's probably where the fight is going to take place. Unless Pantoja wants to keep it standing, maybe he'll be able to do that if Royval is not a willing wrestler. So that'll be an interesting stylistic thing to break down. Pantoja's fought the better level of competition here, but if we look at my strength to schedule metric, it's actually kind of close. Pantoja's overall ratio is a 1.61 compared to 1.45, but Royval, in that small sample size, has actually fought the more experienced competition. If we look at the wins, the ratio of the wins for Pantoja, 1.4 compared to 1.11 for Royval. But once again, we see Royval is beating the actually more experienced competition. And then if we look at the losses, we see that the losses are really coming on both sides to top-notch competition. Brandon Moreno, the current champ of the flyweight division for Brandon Royval, and then losses to guys like Davison Figueiredo, former champion, Askar Askarov, future title contender. And then do you know Pantoja's third loss is? I can't think of it off the top of my head.
No, I can look it up while you keep talking.
Yeah, okay. But either way, I do see that this is going to be an interesting fight to break down, because I am not sure if Pantoja wants to grapple with Royval. He might have more success on the feet. It's a very interesting stylistic matchup, because it's hard for me to picture what the game plan is for both of these guys, because they're both so good all around. Royval is younger, a little less experienced, but they're both at pretty sweet spots in their career. Pantoja, even though he's got 28 fights, he's still only 31 years old. So he's definitely, still got a lot of good years left. And Royval's still only 28. and a 12-5 record, champion in another organization. Yeah, man, this is going to be a very interesting one. Which way are you leaning on this one?
Yeah, that third loss was to Dustin Ortiz, by the way.
Oh, great wrestler.
Yep, great wrestler. He took him down 7 times in that fight as well. Man, I think this is a great fight. I think it's a very high-level fight. I'm kind of surprised by the odds. I kind of have a feeling that Brandon Royval is going to be one of the more popular dog plays on the card. We have Pantoja opening up -125, currently -163. Royval opening up +105, currently +143. I personally do like the Pantoja side. I do like the experience of Pantoja. He's been fighting in the UFC a lot longer, been fighting some absolute killers, and I like him overall. I think he's very good. I actually think he's very underrated as well. Has a very underrated ground game. He's got, I think it's like either a brown belt or like a black belt in BJJ. His ground game is very good. Obviously, you probably do think that, Royval is going to be the more dangerous grappler. The guy is very dangerous. Both guys are dangerous on the mat. But yeah, I mean, if Pantoja can keep this standing, I think he's going to have a lot of success. And, Royval, you take a look at, some of his fights as of recent, and you compare him to, fights, a couple of years ago, this guy has made like improvements in his striking, leaps and bounds. Training at a very good camp in Factory X, and he's still very young, 28 years old. So I think he's only going to be making more and more improvements. I think Brandon Royval has a ton of upside. So I think it's a very competitive fight. I slightly lean with Pantoja. I think he is going to be the better striker. I think he's the more tested fighter as well. But, Brandon Royval, he's going to be making improvements. He's at a very good camp. Like I said, he's a young guy. Close fight. It's a very close fight. And I don't necessarily agree with the odds of Pantoja being -163 and Royval being that big of a dog. I do like Pantoja, though. I think that line's going to really close up. I see Brandon Royval being a very popular play. A lot of people like this guy. This guy's a very popular guy, and I think Pantoja, he's very underrated. I think he's not appreciated enough. So I do see that line closing quite a bit. If that line does close enough, I might take a look there. But for now, I think the line is slightly off, but I'm still going to be able to pick Pantoja to win the striking exchanges, maybe mix in takedowns, stay safe on top. Like you said, he's never been submitted. He's never been knocked out. This guy's next level toughness, but I can see it being competitive, Uncle Weezy.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. This is a hell of a co-main event. Can't wait for it. These are two really guys that are top 10 right now in the flyweight division and really dangerous in their own way. So yeah, can't wait for this one, man.
Yes, sir. Tajik in the chat. What's up, Tajik, the GOAT? All right, here we're getting into the main event. Before we do so, if you guys can leave a like. We passed 100 likes. Thank you guys so much. Let's keep getting those likes up. Do want to remind you guys that there will be no Stat Diggers show on Sunday. We're doing it 2 weeks early here, but we will be back next Tuesday with the new DFS show as well. For me personally, I will be getting out my full card breakdown prediction video sometime during the week. I'm going to take tomorrow off. I'm very exhausted. It's been an exhausting past couple of weeks, so I'm going to take the day off tomorrow and get right back into it and hopefully get that video out maybe Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Friday at the very latest, but that'll be out pretty soon there. I'm not sure when Uncle Weezy is going to start getting out content, but I'm assuming he's probably going to get it done sometime this week as well. So here we go. We have the main event of the evening. We have Jared Cannonier going against Kelvin Gastelum. We have Cannonier, who is 37 years old, 5'11" with a 77-inch reach, going against Kelvin Gastelum, 29 years old, 5'9" with a 71-inch reach. Some important things to point out is going to be Kelvin Gastelum is going to be 8 years younger. He's going to have a 2-inch height disadvantage. He's going to have a 6-inch reach disadvantage as well. He's going to be the much smaller fighter. Obviously, Jared Cannonier is somebody that has fought at heavyweight before, and Kelvin Gastelum probably should be a weight class down. So we'll take a look at the last couple of fights between the two. Jared Cannonier, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Knockout loss to Dominic Reyes, knockout win over David Branch, a knockout win over Anderson Silva, a knockout win over Jack Hermanson, and then a decision loss recently to Robert Whittaker. As far as Gastelum, 1-4 in his last 5 fights, had that absolute war with Israel Adesanya, one of the best fights I've ever seen. Decision loss there to him. A split decision loss to Darren Till, a very, very close fight that probably could have went his way. A submission loss to Jack Hermanson in the first minute. A decision win over Ian Heinisch, and then a decision loss to Robert Whittaker. So, yeah, I mean, Kelvin Gastelum on a little bit of a skid here. He did have that win against Ian Heinisch, but you take a look at, Robert Whittaker, Hermanson, Till, Adesanya. I think Ian Heinisch is like a huge drop below those guys. So he was able to bounce back in a way, but he's still losing to good competition, though both guys are. So interesting fight here, interesting main event. What are you thinking here, Weezy?
Yeah, man, it's hard to believe Kelvin Gastelum's only 29 years old, isn't it? I mean, when he won the Ultimate Fighter against, Uriah Hall, I think he might have been 21 years old. So that was, it's just shocking to see that Jared Cannonier is 8 years older than Kelvin Gastelum. I mean, that's shocking to me. But he's obviously the much bigger dude. You talked about it. Cannonier started his UFC career at heavyweight, then fought a couple down at light heavyweight. Now he's cutting down to middleweight. So he's going to be the much bigger dude because Gastelum is just a blown up welterweight. Everybody knows it. He just never was able to make weight at welterweight. So now he's been forced up to middleweight, where he's definitely one of the smallest guys in the division. We got Gastelum with an experience advantage. That's not shocking. He's got 6 more fights than Cannonier as a pro, about 127 more minutes of cage time as a pro, and 2 more years as a pro as well. So we got a big experience advantage here for Gastelum, especially at the UFC level, boasting 19 UFC fights. 19 of his 24 professional fights have come at the UFC level. That's almost 80% of his career taking place at the highest level of mixed martial arts. While for Cannonier, it's over 50%. 11 of his 18 pro fights have been in the UFC, amassing a 6-5 record. If we see how these guys finish fights, we see that Cannonier is a knockout artist. 69% of his pro wins by knockout, 15% by sub. That means an 84% finish rate. That's 11 out of 13 wins by finish. Very impressive. For Gastelum, in his 16 wins, he's gotten 4 by submission and 6 by knockout. So 10 of his 16 wins coming inside the distance. We look in Gastelum's 7 losses, he has lost 2 by submission, and in Cannonier's 5 losses, he's lost 2 by knockout. So, there's a path to victory for knockout by Gastelum, and there's a path to victory by submission for Cannonier. But you know what? Neither one of those guys really does that to the other. So it's interesting. If this fight were to finish, how would it happen? Gastelum has never been knocked out, and Cannonier likes to knock people out. And then, Cannonier has actually been knocked out, but Gastelum is not exactly what we're going to call a knockout artist, especially at 185 pounds. If we look at the striking numbers, we see that Cannonier's got some pretty impressive numbers here, landing 3.7 significant strikes a minute, only absorbing 3.1 for a positive significant strike differential of 0.6. He's also displaying a 64.28% striking defense. So very good there for Cannonier. And then we add in the fact that Cannonier is landing a knockdown on over 1% of his total significant strikes landed. So in 357 significant strikes in the UFC, he's got 4 knockdowns. Very impressive. And Gastelum, not to be outdone, showing a 1.04 knockdowns per total significant strikes landed, landing 0.5 knockdowns per 15 minutes. That means Kelvin Gastelum has amassed 9 UFC knockdowns in 19 fights. So both of these guys are landing a knockdown in about 50% of the fights that they're in. So definitely a lot of power in their hands for both of these guys. In terms of defense, both of these guys absorb less than they land. Gastelum with about a 57.5% defense. Cannonier exceptional, up at 64.28. Gastelum a little less chinny than Cannonier, as we see Cannonier has been knocked down 4 times in 299 strikes, while it's been 5 times in 800 for Gastelum. So Gastelum is getting knocked down about less than half the rate per 15 minutes than Cannonier is. Gastelum is going to be the more willing wrestler here, as he averages about 2.5 takedown attempts per fight, while for Cannonier, he averages about 0.25 takedowns attempts per fight. So Gastelum will be the more likely guy to want to wrestle here. Cannonier's takedown defense has not been good, so there definitely is a path for Gastelum here if he wants to use his wrestling. However, keep in mind, this is going to be a 5-round fight, and it's hard to keep that kind of a game plan for 5 rounds. A wrestling heavy game plan is not good for the gas tank, and Gastelum hasn't really been known to have like that crazy gas tank, especially if he wrestles a lot. And Cannonier only stopping 54%. He's been controlled about 25% of the time. So we do see if Gastelum wants to take that route. Cannonier has been out-controlled by his opponents at about a 4-to-1 rate, while Gastelum, is equal in control time with his opponents. Gastelum's opponents have attempted 78 takedown attempts against him in 20 fights. So, almost 4 takedown attempts per fight. 29 of them have been successful. So he's only got a 62% takedown defense in his own right. If we look at the level of competition, Gastelum is fighting the more experienced competition, but the better win-loss ratio is with Cannonier's opposition. So I would say that the level of competition is actually a little bit pretty similar. While Cannonier has the better ratio, Gastelum has fought the more experienced opponents, and that is in the overall, in the wins and the losses. So yeah, man, this is a close fight. I guess it depends on who you like and who you think is going to land the big shot. For me, I just like the fact that Cannonier is going to be the much bigger guy, and in my opinion, the much more powerful guy. Gastelum's knockdowns haven't been coming at 185. Cannonier is just the much bigger dude. I think he's going to be hitting much harder here. But Gastelum's a really good boxer. He's a really good, well-rounded mixed martial artist, and surprisingly, he's 8 years younger, despite the fact that he has twice as much professional experience here as Cannonier. So, man, I don't know, man. What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's such a close fight. You brought up a lot of great points. I do agree with you. I give the power advantage to Cannonier, but man, Gastelum has an unreal chin. I just don't see Cannonier knocking him out. And if he doesn't knock him out, man, it's gonna be a really close fight. We will take a look at the line, which kind of surprises me because we do see Cannonier opening up as a minus 200 favorite. He's now minus 151. Gastelum opening up plus 170. He's now plus 131. So some money is coming in on the Gastelum side, and I think it's a close fight. I think it's a very close fight. It's a close. Like on the feet, I think it's going to be very competitive. But what I kind of like is Gastelum going to be able to probably mix in takedowns here and there. But again, you mentioned it. The cardio is a concern. Him being able to wrestle for 5 rounds, it's a concern as well. It's dog or pass for me. I think the line's a tad off here. I'm going to go with Gastelum. I think it's going to be a very, very close, a very competitive fight. I don't necessarily see anybody getting knocked out, and it could happen. But man, Gastelum has an unreal chin. I think maybe Cannonier can catch him, but if he does not knock out Gastelum, I see this going to decision and being a very, very close fight. I will slightly lean with the dog here in Gastelum to mix in those takedowns. I think the striking is going to be very, very, very competitive. But I don't know if I'll get there from a betting perspective, especially seeing the line move now. I see it on plus 142 on Fan. It actually opened up at plus 195 on FanDuel. My goodness, for Kelvin Gastelum, yeah. Now it's minus or plus 142 for Gastelum on FanDuel there. Even like the props, like the over-under, I wouldn't really mess around with them because both guys have a ton of power. And although I don't expect a finish, both guys are more than capable of getting a finish here. But yeah, for me, it's dog or pass, but not like overly confident in picking Kelvin Gastelum here.
Yeah, and that shin of his is something else. Like you mentioned, 5 times he's been knocked down in the UFC, but he's had 19 UFC fights. He's never been knocked out, not in his entire career. That's crazy. So the guy's incredibly durable. So, this could be a real war. This could be, a couple guys really covered in blood by the 4th round, huffing and puffing. Just really, this is going to be a good damn fight. I can't wait for this one. But yeah, I am having a really hard time kind of finding, because if you can find things that you like about both fighters, and you could say, well, Cannonier's got this, and this, but man, he's 8 years older than Gastelum, and he's got so much less experience. And then you talk about how Gastelum's never been knocked out. The guy's got incredible toughness. What happens if he eats some of Cannonier's best shots and then he keeps coming? Maybe Gastelum could get to Cannonier late here. Yeah, dude, I'm having a hard time finding a side on this one, but I'll tell you, I really like the over or the fight goes to decision. Will probably have some value. Yeah, because the way that Cannonier gets finished is by knockout. So Gastelum could knock him out, but the way that Gastelum gets finished is by sub, and Cannonier's not subbing anybody. No. So I don't really see Gastelum getting finished. And Gastelum being the much smaller guy, I think he's a great boxer, great striker, but Cannonier's been, facing heat from, heavyweights and light heavyweights. So I think that if we really look into the numbers here, we look at the toughness of both guys and we look at the size discrepancy here, the fight goes to decision might be the best bet for this fight.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where they set that over under. I'm assuming maybe like at 2.5 rounds, maybe 3.5 rounds, because both guys, like we mentioned, are finishers. Jared Cannonier, a lot of people probably expect him, him to go out there and starch Kelvin Gastelum. I just don't really see that happening. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm going to be looking at the potential over, or maybe even a potential fight goes to decision bet, depending on the line, which hopefully they do open soon. But yeah, Weezy, we did it. We went through 14 fights. 14 fights. We did it at a very good time as well. So thank you all so much for hanging out every Sunday. We did it, extra early this week. We have no card next week, like I mentioned. We will be back in 2 weeks. And then we'll have our DraftKings show next week on Tuesday, 7:00 p.m. Eastern time. I will be getting out my full card breakdown and prediction video within the next couple days. I have to finish up some tape, and I'll be recording that very soon. I'm taking tomorrow off, but then I'll get right back on it. You can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers. Instagram is DFS by the numbers. You want to follow me on there. I do post my bets for free every Saturday. Uncle Weezy, let them know where they can find you and what you got going on and your plans for the week.
Yeah, thanks you guys once again for hanging out with us on a Sunday night. Over 100 of you in here today. We really appreciate that, man. We appreciate the support, the donations. This wouldn't be the same without you guys. You can follow me on Twitter at MMA Weezy, and you can check me out on YouTube. My channel is Uncle Weezy. I do balls deep breakdowns of fights. Usually do 3 or 4 every single week. And I'm looking to actually debut a new show perhaps next week. As I've been going balls deep into all these fights, I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a different direction, do a full card breakdown, which I will be calling Just the Tip with Uncle Weezy, because we want to, just think of it as a sensual prelude to a full balls deep breakdown, but on the entire card. So I just want to, I want to do a full card breakdown where I kind of just touch on the important parts of each fight instead of diving into all the statistics for the fight, and get it done in less than an hour. So I'm looking to do that next week. I'm going to be debuting that show. Other than that, just check me out on YouTube. Check me out on Twitter. I'm going to be working hard this week, updating my database, working on some new graphics. I'm not taking the week off, man. I am going to try to upgrade everything else that's behind the scenes that you guys don't see.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. Yeah, full card breakdown from Uncle Weezy. I'll definitely be tuning in. I think the fans might want to see maybe an ass shaving of the week video potentially in the future.
Oh, now that's also something that was going to definitely be a plan, for the Just the Tip card, is maybe we'll finish up after we've looked at all the important stats, kind of touched on them for all the fights. Maybe then we can come up together with an ass shaving of the week that'll come through every single week, man. Make you guys some money. The ass shaving of the week will be a weekly thing coming up on my channel. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate that.
I like it. Okay, so thank you guys again for hanging out. If you guys can leave a like on your way out, you can hit up me or Uncle Weezy Twitter. Pretty good at getting back to you guys there. So that's about it, guys, and we will see you very soon. Enjoy the week off, and good luck for UFC Vegas 34 in a couple weeks. See you guys.